Intro on the ancient ground of Kenya, a broken shard lies like a sleeping memory. You touch the sharp edge with a fingertip and hear a faint crack, as if the night itself was splitting to show its past. In 2011 at Lomekwi, tools about 3.3 million years old surfaced from windworked soil. Until then we believed only the genus Homo knew how to make them. Yet those large stones, set on a hard anvil and struck to knock off pieces, stood quietly before Oldowan and before Homo by roughly 500,000 years. Their edges are sharp yet uneven. The fallen flakes are big and crude. Impact scars remain on the faces, speaking a language that needs no script. Within that evidence is a quiet shift. Early hands already chose stone, turned the core, found the point where a split would start. An early mind already knew to wait for the right moment. Not a full tool culture, not a skill spread wide. Only a first, unsteady beginning, enough to open a door larger than itself. Tonight let your breath slow. Picture the earth warming beneath your back and a mild grey sky drifting above. The stories will lead you to places where stone speaks, to a meal opened by a heavy flake, to the instant a mind lights, to a body-changing tempo, and to a sturdier circle of people around a heap of stones already used. Each step is light. Each scene is clear, never beyond what the ground has kept. Inhale through your nose and breathe out slowly. The past still whispers. We begin there. A short blow lands on the stone anvil, then silence. A sharp flake slips from the core, tilts on the sandy ground, its grey light winking like a faint star. There are no drums. There is no triumph. There is only old earth and bare hands learning how to speak to stone. You stand on warm, dry ground, a thin Kenya wind passing over. Ahead lies a patch of hard surface, flat almost like a rough table set by nature. On it, uneven round dents overlap. Each dent is one strike. Each raised ring is a hard contact between a stone core and a natural anvil. When someone lifts another rock, grips it with both hands because it is heavy, then lets the swing fall, the sound comes like a drum in the earth. Force runs through the slab, a crack line travels below. The edge of the flake that just split off glints very slightly. You see a new cutting edge form, sharp enough to score bark or slice the thin skin. That edge is uneven. The corners are coarse, the face of the flake rough. Large chips fall, awkward in shape, lying in the sand like the scales of a stone creature that has just shed. Since 2011, the name Lomekwi has stepped out of archaeologists' notebooks and into many people's imaginations. An age of about 3 million years is not a dry exam number. It is the depth of time you're tracking. Before that, we thought only members of the genus Homo made tools. Yet here, with large stones, with the act of placing a core on a hard base and striking it with another stone, or of smashing the core directly on an anvil, someone brought a sharp edge to this surface a good 500,000 years before the Oldowan and before the genus Homo. No need to speak loudly. Lay your hand on this ground and you can feel the past humming faintly under the skin. Follow one action slowly. First comes choosing material. Not every stone will fracture into a usable flake. That hand looks for a block with grain inside and the right hardness. It weighs a little more than the pebbles you pick up by a stream. Its shape fits the palm but is large enough to take a few strong blows. Beside it is the natural anvil, perhaps a rock bedded firm and oddly flat amid the rough field around it. On its face you see pale smudges, places where stone touches often have turned dull and the surface has grown calloused. The next move looks simple. Lift the core, seated on a corner of the anvil, or draw a breath to steady. The other hand takes a second stone, heavier than a fist, cool and slick on the side, less battered. Strike. No slip. A muffled sound. A small crack appears and runs along the grain, then stops because the force is not enough. Strike again, this time a little harder. The torso leaning into the blow, the crack lengthens. A stone flake lifts like a scale. It falls slantwise to the anvil's edge. Turns once, lies still. Along the fresh break a ribbon of light shows, thin as a small blade, not bright like metal, but sharp enough to raise threads from bark, sharp enough to draw a fine scratch on your skin if you are careless. At Lomekwi such traces lie in clusters. There is not one anvil but many. Each anvil is a small stage for a repeated act. Hammer scars sit deep, and wedge marks so fine you must bend close to see them. Each mark is proof of intent. Stone did not hit stone by accident. A sharp edge did not appear by chance. Someone set a target for the strike. Someone understood that where you place the core and the angle of the blow decide the path of the crack. This is not the finesse of later times when flakes are controlled with great skill. But the first step is the step that matters most. Once the first sharp edge appears by design, the world has changed. You bend and pick up a chip from an earlier strike. It is large, its rim jagged, its inner face cupped with shallow channels. You draw a finger lightly along the edge. The latent sharpness makes you tuck your hand back by reflex. This flake is not for looking at. It is for work. It can score the tough skin of a root. It can shave fibres from a branch. It can skim a narrow cut through soft tissue on a carcass left by other carnivores. No lecture is needed. The edge itself tells you what it wants to do. At the anvil's rim, big chips lie in heaps. Some are flat like wide fish scales. Some are thick like a piece of hollow bone. Some are triangular, the upper margin sharper and the lower dull where the break ran deep. Lay them near one another and you see a scattered picture of trials. Not every strike produces a good flake. Some failed blows only nick the core. Some heavy swings ruin an edge and crush the portion that needed to stay sharp. This craft is learned with eyes and hands. Repeated again and again, each time drawing a little more feel for force and angle. The wind shifts. Fine dust lifts from the rock face. The hand seats the core again. This time there is no second hammerstone. Both hands hold the core, lift it higher. The holder smashes it straight down on the anvil. The drop makes the whole base tremble. A crack opens on the opposite rim. A new flake shoots off, slides across the anvil and drops by the striker's feet. You hear it touch the ground. It is thinner, sharper than the last. Two different methods, two kinds of flake. One uses a hammer, one relies on the core's own weight. Both need an anvil. Both give you what the stream bank does not hand you by itself. They give you a cutting edge right when you need one. In soft light, the anvil looks like a rough altar to work. There is no smoke. There is no fire. There is the sound of striking, the sound of falling flakes, the rhythm of breathing. You look around. The ground shows darker patches where chips lie thick. Small footpaths lead into and out of this place. Perhaps only a few hands are working now, yet from the scene you can imagine a chain of days. Each day holds some hours for stone, some for finding food, some for resting out the heat. That rhythm repeats long enough for a midden like this to form. One thing is worth pausing for. This is not at all culture already set by common rule. Each flake bears a different hand. The skill is uneven. Core size is not one standard. This tells you the craft is new. It has not spread evenly across a wide region. It is not taught by fixed law yet. It may have sprung up in a few bands, a few places, in a few similar ways. Even so, once it happens once, the place is different. That lack of sameness is the first breath, the breath of a young idea. Try to picture before. A hand lifts a smooth stream pebble to smash a fruit shell. That is use. Now the same hand is not only using, it creates an edge, it alters a form, it intervenes so the stone fits the hand better. In a world where most things still must be accepted as they are, this is a move from yielding to choosing. A very small step, a line all the same. We also need to say it again. We can only speak to what the earth has brought up. At Lomekwi the evidence lies in large coarse flakes, in natural anvils, in hammer scars that still show. There are no written records, no drawings that teach how the hand was held, no story handed down, so every claim must walk inside that fence, and inside the fence there is still much to hear. Watch how an early worker's eye reads stone. There is no ruler or compass. There is a hazy store of trees. Turning the core in the hand, they look for the margin most likely to split. This needs no hard words. It is a feel, like when you bend a dry twig and know which way it wants to break. Stone is harder because it is not as compliant as wood. With a few attempts, someone has seen a simple rule. Every nodule has faces that bear force differently. Some points are weak. Hit where it will give and the crack will run more as you wish. In other words, there is something like a map inside the stone. The striker is learning to read it, not by script but by the feelings in fingers and wrist. By the anvil, bodies and stones throw diagonal shadows. The dry wind carries fine dust from the chip bed, and a faint tang of fresh broken stone. There is no loud talk. If there is sound, it is the breath drawn for a heavy lift or the press of grass underfoot. The scene is calmer than you think. It is not violence. It feels like a work rite. The hammer taps the anvil. The anvil answers with a low tone. The flake leaves as if in return. A hand picks it up and tests the edge on bark. The margin bites a fibre and draws out a long pale strand. You feel your back loosen, your arm go light, because a new thing has just been made. Looking farther out, you see dark spots where the ground looks stirred. Those may be seats worn by long sitting on soft earth. They may be where cores wait for blows. A few cores show half-made cracks, white lines running a crosshatch on grey faces. They prove some strikes went off track. You do not judge. This is learning. Learning needs no school. The anvil is the desk, the rock face the board, the crack marks the chalk. The assignment is to repeat until the flake comes off in the wanted way. After a time, hands tire. Wrists burn a little from the shock. Chests heave from lifting heavy things. Workers swap places. One watches another. No one needs notes. Knowledge travels by sight. A child can stand well back, watch for a while, then start copying with a smaller stone. It does not make a usable flake at once. It learns which sound among the sounds is the right one. It hears the deep tone, hears the dull tone, learns the moment before a flake lets go. Such things pass by ear and eye. From here you can touch the crack in an old belief. Toolmaking did not wait for the genus Homo to arrive. 500,000 years earlier, other hands were speaking with stone. Keep your voice low. This does not say they had a tight system of tools like later people. It is only the first riser in a long stair. This riser is rough and uneven, and each foot lands on it a little differently. But it exists. From it, people can look up. You take another flake, thicker and heavier. Its edge is not as sharp as the thin one. Its head can be used like a pestle. Set it on the anvil. Give a light tap to an imagined dry bone in your mind. Hear the hollow knock. Picture the marrow inside, rich and sweet, a rare energy in a world without surplus meals. You do not go farther. That belongs to the next part. For now the note to keep is the presence of edge and of club. Two functions born from one strike. A simple step that opens many ways. The light shifts. The anvil warms and cools again as clouds drift past. Blows thin out as hands wear out. Chips are brushed from the face to keep a flat seat for next time. Perhaps the sharper flakes are gathered into a corner for first use. Perhaps the poorer ones are heaped to review tomorrow. No one hurries. This work keeps the hours of strength and daylight, not a clock. As day tilts and edges blur in the eye, the strikes grow fewer. This is the time to rest and wait for new light. The chip bed lies still in the night like a sleeping school of stonefish. You touch your heel to the ground. The cool runs up into the soul and reminds you how near all this is. One blow is like snapping kindling. One sharp flake is like a small kitchen knife. No grandeur is needed. Lomekwi's quiet is its force. It raises no poles and carves no stele. It only changes a stone's edge. Once that edge grows sharp, the earliest people meet the world with another tool in hand. On this still base, your mind naturally turns to the one who made the first flake. How they stood, where they held breath. Whether they felt let down when the break went wrong. Whether they felt glad when a new edge bit bark. These questions have no written reply. They can only be answered by your own body's sympathy with the act. Imagine the wrist turning a core. Imagine the shoulder releasing force. Imagine the foot set firm so it does not slip. Each part of you answers with a very old memory. That memory has no words, it lives in muscle. And muscle remembers. You sit, your back to a low rock, the anvil in front of you, chips at your side. Farther on is the path to the water where round pebbles lie shoulder to shoulder. There are stones there fit to carry back. The rhythm from stream to anvil and from anvil to food makes a loop. The loop is small as a yard, yet from small repeated loops history slowly turns. No need to rush. This story needs a slow beat like the beat of a stone hammer. When cloud covers the sun and the ground cools, you see a hand lift the core again. Each strike presses another bit of understanding into the surface. Hammer marks cross and layer into a map with no letters. The next person only needs to look to know where the good seat is. They place the core there because that flat holds truer. This is accumulation. No symbols are needed. Traces are enough. This is how knowledge moves in a time without paper. You listen to your body. Your neck moves slowly. Your shoulders loosen. Your breath evens. Everything settles into ease. There is nothing occult here. Everything's concrete, reachable, held in the simple words. Stone, hand, strike, anvil, flake, edge, chip, wind, ground. Those words build the whole scene and pull you into a world older than our familiar names. You do not need scientific terms. You need to keep a feeling. The feeling of a new edge born on an old surface. Let the first part stop here, right by the anvil, still warm. We have watched closely how a sharp flake is born, have heard the blow on the anvil, have read the wedge marks. Inside the fence of data, each small detail opens a field of meaning. From that sharp edge, a very human next question rises: what are these flakes for? How does a meal change when your hand holds stone? Draw in a breath, let it out slowly. Let your body store the rhythm of stone. Then we will walk the path down to the water and on to where food waits, using only what the earth has shown us, no more and no less. The smell of dry bone mixes with hot soil. A hollow leg bone lies between two stones, its outer rind casting a dim shadow on sand. A hand sets a fresh flake on the bone, not to cut, but to search. The sharp edge runs along the surface, looking for a weak line. Then the heavy hammer falls. The crack rings short, dull and deep. The bone face breaks with a ripple. One more blow. Shock runs up the arm and leaves the wrist warm and tingling. The hard shell gives at last. The break opens, a pale core of marrow shining like fat. No one cries out. Breathing slows. A rough split stick serves as spoon. Marrow is scooped, thick and dense. Fat blooms on the tongue and quiets the empty belly. In an unfriendly world, a hard-won energy is here thanks to stone and the force of hand. Not far away, a second flat slab lies like a low table. On it are old roots, scaly-skinned, their surfaces clotted with dry soil. A big thick flake, its edge not very sharp but heavy, serves as a pounder. The beat steadies. The root splits and white flesh appears. Someone takes a thinner flake to scrape fibres and peel tough strands free. Each motion spares the jaws, instead of biting a whole knot of toughness. Now there are small pieces, softer. There is no fire to change flavour. Yet simply breaking, chopping, scraping makes a large difference from chewing a stubborn wad. The jaws work less. The body receives food in a friendlier state. No words are needed. The body understands on its own. Between the two work spots lies ground, scuffed by old branches. A dry stem is set crosswise. A flake with a longer edge is chosen. The edge is uneven, but it bites. The tip presses into the bark and draws a slow cut. The bark lifts in thin ribbons. Pale wood shows. A few more cuts and a straight section is taken. It will be a handle for a digging stick, or a light rod for sweeping brush, or simply a small carrying pole to make loads easier. From a trunk that did not yield, a lighter, straighter, better fitting piece now exists. Each cut is a new word in the wordless language of labour. You read the accumulations around this place. By the hollow bones are piles of old rein pushed aside. By the pounding slab, fibrous strands lie scattered like hair. At the fallen trunk, curled sheets of bark are heaped. This is not a one-off scene. This is repetition. A little every day, long enough for Earth to keep the memory. And in the repetition, a different way of living comes into view. No longer only gathering what nature leaves ready to eat. Hands are moving into the middle, making the hard release the soft, making the closed open. That is the core change. Toward the water, round pebbles lie stacked. Someone sometimes bends to pick a slightly flat one that sits sure in the hand. That will be a hammer. Another stone, lumpy-faced with white and brown specks, will be a core. On the way back to the anvil, the stone-bearer stops by a bush with small fruit. A thin flake comes from a rough leather pouch and scores the skin so the astringency eases. There is no neat steel blade. There is only a piece of stone that knows how to bite fibre. Yet simple acts like this, done from fruit to fruit, make a midday that has enough energy. There are times to contest. A carcass lies on dry ground, the predator's tooth mark still scored in torn hide. The blood smell is faint, but it still calls birds and small scavengers. Now the sharp flake serves a different role. It does not turn the weak into strong hunters, but it helps to take what remains quickly and cleanly. A few incisions cut sinew, a slip into the seam between skin and meat. The soft parts lift free. Time by the carcass is shorter, and the risk of being found is lower. Strength has not changed. What has changed is that the hand is no longer bare. Each small task writes a new feeling into the body. The jaw no longer goes numb chewing roots too hard. The wrist no longer aches from trying to break bone by hand. Shoulders no longer give out from hauling a carcass heavier than a person. Instead, there is the sure feel of a blow landing where it should. The lightness when a cutting edge slides cleanly through fibre. The satisfaction when cool marrow touches the tongue. Such feelings stack day by day. No one records them in letters. Bones, muscles, teeth and gut keep the record. Over long spans they may shift a little towards saving labour. No one makes a proclamation. The ground will tell. On a different afternoon you follow a figure to a great fallen tree. Roots spill up, clods still clinging. This is where tubers like to hide. A hand uses a digging stick to probe the damp earth at the shady edge. Soft ground gives way. A flake edge scrapes off the thick skin. A tuber the size of a wrist appears. Left whole it will be tough. Pounded first it will chew more easily. The hammer lifts. The beat falls even and need not be hard. The core breaks into strips. A light starchy smell rises on the breeze. A rigid mass becomes small, inviting pieces. Fullness lasts longer. The belly is not weighed down by force feeding. Elders and children eat more easily. The band keeps its strength more evenly when on the move. Not everything works. A glancing blow sends a shard into a companion's shin. A thin cut opens, shallow but stinging. The small lesson presses into memory at once. When cracking bone, stand one pace offline. When lifting a hammer, keep the wrist straight. When pushing a thin flake, keep the thumb clear of the path. Rules that no one speaks form around the anvil and the food pile. There is no headman reading aloud. Everyone hears with the eyes. A slight shake of the head at an unsafe stance. A flick of the chin to change the striking angle. Language at the level of hints. The body taking care of the rest. As the sun tilts, the day's finds are gathered. A heap of old peels lies on one side. The straight rods, stripped clean, are tied in a bundle. The best flakes are laid together in a rock hollow where feet will not crush them. The hollow bones are not carried away. They are heavy. Their emptiness is the value already taken. Looking over the scene, you see one thing clearly. There is no fire. There is no hearth. There is no smoke to warm the evening. Yet thanks to stone, meals have changed and the hand has more power over wood and bone. Days do not pass only on soft food found by chance. Days have more plan. Morning to find stone, midday to pound and scrape, afternoon to share and rest. This rhythm is simple and essential. At times the weather turns, wind drives dark cloud close. Fine sand flies. The open anvils are no longer usable. People move to a rock under a canopy where the face is still flat enough. Skilled hands choose a new spot by very concrete needs. There must be a seat for the core, room to swing, a way to get out if an animal comes. Such weighing shows that thinking about place has shifted a little beyond shade alone. The work site now must fit the work. A small piece of organising thought flashes into life. On another day the band crosses a patch where many stones lie already broken. Oddly, the flakes there are not as sharp as the ones from the anvil. Surfaces are rough and rims ragged. Water has smoothed them or wind has dulled them. The lesson is gentle and clear. Nature gives much, but to make it fit the hand you still need the act. Hammer and anvil are not ornaments. They bridge what is given and what is used. No need to speak of philosophy. Put a thin anvil flake to fibre and it goes. Put a random field flake to fibre and it does not. The difference draws itself like a line on sand. On top of eating there is a small layer of care. After opening bone, a little marrow is kept in a piece of bark and given to the elders. They need not chew much. They need energy to go on a little farther. When pounding roots, the softer mash is saved for the youngest, the ones without enough teeth for biting. There is no elaborate rite. A hand sets the portion into the hand that needs it. This sharing lets the band travel farther and endure better. It begins with a sharp edge that breaks roots and with a blow that opens bone. Across the length of such days another thing slips into flesh. Teeth need not be as big for grinding tough lumps. Jaws need not be as strong to face rigid roots. Guts need not work as long on fibres that are too coarse. These changes do not come in one season or one life. They are possibilities, directions one can go. Yet that direction has existed since the first flake came off by intent. Brains did not suddenly swell because of tools. When a little energy is saved because chewing is less harsh. When fat-rich marrow enters more often. The body gains room to invest in other things besides chewing and running. Everything that needs to be said is already in that rhythm of life. No need to claim too much. Just set it in the right place in the picture. Late in the day there is one more walk to the water. On the path are fresh animal tracks, claws pressed deep. The band stops, not hurrying past. A stick flicks the brush and makes enough noise to avoid surprise if something is there. When it feels safer, the lead steps on. At the pebble bar they choose a few promising stones. These are wet and slick. Hands wipe them in grass to check the sheen of the faces. Back straight under the load, feet set firm, breathing even. There are no big soothing words. Calm comes from knowing that at the anvil these will become useful things. Back at the work site the good flakes are reviewed. Those whose edges are worn from scraping go to one side to be used as pounders. Those still sharp are tucked into the safe rock hollow. A straight stick, freshly stripped, is tested as a handle, balanced by feel. Weight lives in the body. No scale is needed. The hand is the measure, the shoulder the constant. Night is not here yet, but shadow is heavy. This is not a time when fire rings light faces. It is still a time of dimness. In that dimness the look cast on stone, bone, and root is not what it was at the start. Each thing now pairs with an act. Each act leads to a predictable result. That sense of control is light and deep. You breathe in. The scent of earth softens with the wind. The anvil spot is quiet. All around is as still as a pond. In the quiet the hand still remembers thumb positions on a flake, force in the wrist for striking, pace for pounding. The body carries back with you very near, very real memories that need no names. Their making is not loud, but it holds. Looking back at the day's picture, you see a line of the links, from anvil to bone, from bone to marrow to steadier steps, from digging stick to softer root, from softer root to sleep without belly cramps, from such small things to the band's endurance. Overhead a thin streak of the last light remains. The ground cools, the chips lie mute. Everything leans toward rest. In your palm the chill of a fresh flake still lingers. That feeling is a small seed. At first light it will call the hand back to the anvil, call the flat thud of a blow, call the smell of marrow and root mash, call the habit of sharing. Your story need not rush. It moves to that beat, steady and sure, like the way an edge opens from rough stone in noon sun, and then quietly does the work it was born to do. Evening wind falls low. On the dappled work ground old hammer marks lie still like writing in stone. The big core wears a face packed with scars. The anvil is rougher where cores rest. Chips lie in a crescent around it. No one writes this down, yet the way the pieces lie has already said it. A hand turned the core to a side, waited for the right angle, then let the hammer drop on the point. This is not the act of grabbing any stone and hoping for luck. It is a decision. A person lifts the core to the chest, reads pebble veins and old cracks, counts a fall in their head. The blow need not be strong enough to wreck the hole. It must find the place that releases a thick flake with a serviceable edge. The ridges along that fresh margin show the first point of compression, where the hammer nose slid and where the energy spread and died. Someone has learned to read this language with eyes and with the palm, repeated until it is no longer chance. Set a Lomekwi flake next to a later older one blade, and you see the contrast at once. Lomekwi is big and rough, edges sharp but uneven, flake shapes large and unpredictable. Older one is finer, its edges more purposeful. That distance is what makes Lomekwi both crude and precious. It shows the first moment when stone accepts a very simple order. Not a complete tool culture, only a door opening a crack. Repeated gestures make a habit of the place. People choose a flat anvil with standing room to either side to keep clear of flying shards. They pick flat hammers because they sit sure in the hand. They set cores so the chance of a flake coming off is highest. No one tallies successes and failures, the ground does it for them. The thickest crescent of chip sits in front of the anvil and thins out behind the stance. This is the trace of a new order, enough so that tomorrow you can return and continue. Picture a day when wind turns. A thin sheet of sand pours over the anvil, a hand sweeps it clean. The core is set again. Eyes pass quickly over old crack lines and decide. A new flake falls and one stretch of the edge shines. Someone lifts it to an ear to hear the fracture's faint ring, like breath. They do not know names for geometry or mechanics. They only know that when the hammerstone falls on the right place, the world moves a little in the way they want. That feeling is enough to try again tomorrow. Enough to pass by a nod to the one beside them here. Like this. There are days when no flake comes as hoped. The core splits on a bad line and becomes useless rubble. The hammer skids and scuffs the anvil. One person shortens the drop, swaps hands, changes the core's seat. Another watches and stores how the wrist holds straight before release. Learning happens without words. Imitation comes before explanation. The best result does not fall from the sky. It appears after many corrections, many glances and signals. When the band leaves, anvil and core lie there like a recording of a mind in formation. In this slice of time, there is not yet hearth in a cave or a ring of fire. Night is still to be avoided. All work must be done in the day. All the more reason why the hours near noon, when light stands straight, are gold. Hammer nose, core face, and anvil come up sharpest then. Those who live by their eyes know how to use that time to make stone admit a crack they want. Each small sharp flake is one more time the world opens a little. Who was the first worker at Lomekwi? We cannot name them. Fossils point to Kenyanthropus platyops with its oddly flat face, or to Australopithecus afarensis, walking on two legs and still a climber. Whoever it was. They put a hand against an old limit. From taking only what nature granted, they tried to make nature give in another way. The coarse shards prove a level of mind just high enough to set short plans, pick up, place, strike, choose, discard, try again. That is difference enough. That difference has not hardened into strict tradition. Lomekwi flakes do not match from place to place as if a standard already existed. They do not tell a school story. They tell the story of a moment. The moment when a hand first demanded of stone more than a hard face for cracking fruit or bone. The moment when a head starts to predict what will happen if the strike angle changes, if the core's seat moves. The moment when body and intent line up for a brief beat. Beats like that, layered over years, open the way for every technique after. As shadows grow long, you can picture the band leaving the site. They carry little. One thick flake still sharp, one small core for the road. They leave the anvil and the unneeded chips. In their heads they do not leave the count in the breath. The feel in the wrist, the certainty in the eye at the right crack line. Those go along, weightless and durable. Tomorrow on a different bank they may find another anvil. In 2 days by a fallen tree they may hear again the short sound of a blow. The circle of repetition makes experience. Experience brings hope. Hope lets you step one step farther before dark falls. Then a natural question rises like a last bit of marrow left in a tube. What are these flakes for besides proving a hand can ask? Where do they fit in the daily round? By the hollow bone to open the rich core, by the hard root to pound it soft for chewing, by the wood to take straight rods for sticks, by old hide to free the meat still clinging. No need to draw far horizons, follow 2 feet back to the stream bank, the fallen trunk, the low canopy. Set the flake there and a different meal is already open. You hear the wind change. The last gleams on the stone face fade. Everything quiets until even your heartbeat is loud. The flake's story is not hasty. It wants you to lie still and see one small thing that is very large. In that long early span there came a time when people were no longer only enduring. They made a demand of matter, and matter answered with a sharp edge. From that edge countless paths run. One of the nearest is food. Night will come. The anvil face will go cold. Core and hammer will rest like landmarks. With the light the act will repeat, and the question will be answered in the simplest way. What does the flake open today? Bone, root, branch, hide. All lie waiting along the route of travel. Since the flake appeared, each meeting can end better for bodies that need energy. This is the place to pause, to let breath run even, and to picture how the first meal opened with a heavy stone will unfold. In the morning we will sit by the water and watch, very slowly, how a hand brings a sharp flake to a bone tube, how the fat scent lifts, and how the earliest meal begins to change. But a hollow bone tube breaks and releases a buttery scent. The crack sounds dry and deep, then dies quickly, like a secret that has just opened in the mild noon heat. The fragment slips from the palm, the thick marrow flashes an ivory hue. Dust-dark fingers bring the marrow to the lips, each swallow slow and sure. No one speaks, only the steady whir of insects and the hush of water sliding along the gravelly bank. This stream bank knows where to stand. Footprints cross and recross, mingled with the slide marks of stones once dragged here to serve as anvils. Fine bone powder still clings to the work surface, staining it with pale smears. A heavy stone core is set near the edge, a hand holding the far end high. The blow lands true. Force runs through the anvil. The bone tube crazes like thin glass. The unbroken piece springs a little. It does not take many tries. 2, 3 at most. The marrow is sweet and fatty, rich in energy, and it warms the stomach quickly. Elders sitting near the anvil are served first. Children settle in the shade, their feet on damp sand, waiting for small bites. The tools here are big, rough, heavy in the hand. Choose a large core, set it on a flat anvil. Use another stone as hammer, or seat the core on a hard surface and smash. The edge that comes off is uneven. The chips are large. The way the edge is made is not refined like the later blades, yet it cuts, prees and crushes well enough. When a fresh edge meets old hide, you hear fibres part in short strands. When the edge meets an old root, the rhythm of blows checks the outer layer and the core softens bit by bit. Hands learn to change angle, change force and change where the anvil sits to suit each task. Along the waterline lie scattered dry seeds mixed with thin shells, and a few roots swollen from a long soak. These roots used to be stubborn things. The skin was tough, the grain hard, the taste acrid. Now they go on the anvil and get a light tamp from a flat flake. Their fibres craze, the harshness sinks. If they are soaked longer, then brought ashore, a few more thumps are enough to make the core far easier to chew. The broken open root carries a scent, not sweet like fruit, not rich like marrow, yet filling. The group nibbles, jaws moving slowly, throats warming as they swallow. All around, strips of bark and small cut branches still smell of sap. No one fells big trees. That is beyond what these coarse stones can do. It is about trimming hand-wide branches for fibre, for splints, for straight sticks. A sharp edge works through bark. The hand turns the branch, cuts a few shallow lines until the needed section can be bent free. From a straight rod, a pointed tip can be carved with a sharp edge flake. A wedge can be made to open root skins. A shim can be added under the anvil to lift it to the right height. Everything happens slowly, yet every motion pays its way. On the sand are dark, coin-shaped stains of marrow near the seating spot. A flat pebble shines with a smear of pale fat. From time to time a soft clack sounds when flake touches bone. When hands rest, the fatty scent still lingers in the breath. Today's meal will not keep them full as long as a hunted animal would, yet it is steadier and safer than foraging bare-handed. If they eat only fruit and leaves, hunger returns too soon. If they eat raw meat by the slab, teeth and jaws grind themselves sore and the gut twists with indigestion. With stone flakes, bone tubes open quickly, hard roots grow soft, old hide peels from clinging meat. The body saves hours and hours of chewing. Sitting near the water, eyes turn to the current. You notice that each person has a task. One keeps the anvil face flat, brushing sand from it when bone powder cakes. One picks up a fresh flake, tests and chooses the edge that fits the hand best, and sets it aside in shade. One divides the marrow, carefully nudging the smallest portion to the weakest hand. No loud calls are needed. Work flows on the rhythm of glances and nods, like the rhythm of small ripples touching the bank, slipping back, then coming again. There are times when flakes refuse to obey. A dull edge rakes the bone and leaves only faint scratches. A blow goes askew and the tube shatters into useless needles. Then the hammerer tilts his head at the anvil, shifts position, changes his grip and tries again. Another turns the bone tube so a slice of the marrow canal shows at the end. Making a cleaner striking face, there is no scolding, only repair. When the next tube finally opens, a portion of marrow drops into the hand of the one who slipped earlier. That way of sharing keeps the meal steady and prevents it from turning into a scramble. Look a little farther and you will see grass laying down under wind. Flocks inscribing high circles. On the ground, white smears coil like growth rings for the feeding spot. Each ring is a day. Each day is a meal. Every meal has bone, root, bark, flake. There is not a carcass to pick every day, yet each day there is something to smash, to crush, to break. That need draws the band back to the water, back to the familiar anvil, back to the flakes that fit their hands. This place has gained meaning, though no sign hangs and no post is raised. Meaning lives in the habit of returning. The new way of eating brings more than energy. It shifts the body's rhythm in a light way. Old ones tire less from chewing. Young ones can swallow softer things without waiting for a full set of teeth. The sick regain strength with smooth marrow. The afternoon arrives more gently. The heaviness in the back from an empty stomach lifts. The mind is less fogged by long hunger. With those small gains, hands have little patience left to strike cleaner flakes, to choose better cores. to try the anvil in a place where it slips less. The meal feeds the very actions that make the meal. The water runs with a steady sound, like lengthened breathing for the whole bank. In the distance, under a rotted tree's shade, insects swarm over old hide. A flake on hide sounds softly rasping. The tacky layer between skin and meat lets go. The hide is not for wearing. Not yet. It can wrap food. It can be laid under root fragments. It can lie between anvil and bone to make the strike feel more cushioned. Stone makes flakes. Flakes open hide. Hide becomes a temporary tool. Everything links by small gestures. No words, no lessons. After a while, the wind turns and the sour smell of mud rises. The keeper of the anvil shifts his seat to keep wet sand from clinging to the flakes. Another blow falls. The fracture sounds thin, like cracking fruit. This time the marrow is not thick like the first piece, yet a film of slickness still coats the inside. A thin flat flake goes in, breathes gently and lifts that layer out. A child's hand reaches and then pulls back at an adult's nod, then carefully takes its portion. The jaw works unhurriedly. Eyes go soft as the odd sweetness of fat runs slowly down the throat. All that is happening here supports the idea that tools open the meal in this way. Large coarse flakes with rough edges and big chips fit the jobs of crushing, prying, grinding. Bone marrow is high energy and easily absorbed, and it can be the difference between surviving and not in a world of uncertainty. Tough roots and tubers suit teeth and guts better after being battered, soaked and struck. We do not claim that every flake served to cut meat. There's not enough evidence yet to say so firmly. Yet when these rough-edged flakes sit beside bone tubes and old roots, this reading holds. It is modest and sufficiently clear. You tilt your ear and catch another rhythm of blows from the outcrop. Someone may be using a pointed flake to tease fibres from bark. Someone may be trimming a branch to make it straighter. In the band, anyone with free hands finds something to do, not because of an order, because each small act pays back some convenience by day's end. When the sun drops, shoulders will ache. The evening meal still wants easy food, so everyone adds a little until the last rays draw back from the anvil face. There are hazards tight to the water's edge. In the reeds, a snake's old glide mark is still fresh. On the rock ledge are dry claw scrapes. The band does not sit in a long row. They sit in a loose ring, faces turned outward. Eyes eat and scan at the same time. Ears hear chewing and sift for strange sounds. A small stone always lies ready in the hand of the one nearest the bank. At a single odd noise, the sharp flake will sit in the higher hand, and children will draw in by themselves. That habit keeps the meal peaceful, keeps the breathing even, keeps each morsel of marrow on its right path down. Sometimes rain falls without warning. Sand turns quickly to mud. The anvil face grows slick. Flakes lose their bite. The band shifts in under a big tree where the ground remains firm. The portable anvil is a flat slab brought earlier. They fumble in the sand for chocking stones to steady it. The first time it is all confusion. The next time the move comes quicker. Heavy stone is a burden and a kind of insurance. Carrying an extra small anvil means having a chance to eat in the rain. That chance can be the line between a night of mild belly rumble and a long sleepless night of hunger. A meal at the water's edge has no elaborate ritual. No long tales, no songs. Yet it keeps a quiet order. The weak get the easiest food first. The person whose sharp flake has chipped trades with another without being asked. The bone with marrow left has a piece saved for tomorrow, tucked under a rock and marked with a small sign. It is not always there when they return. Yet at times that very saving helps the band walk a little farther until they find a patch of fruit or another root bed. As the light thins, the water cools. Hands rinse the flakes quickly. Do not scrub too hard or the edges will chip. Set the flakes on a dry slab, lift them to drain. The heavy core goes up to rest on tall grass to keep the ground damp from rising to it overnight. Someone checks the anvil again and scrapes away all bone powder to leave a clean face that will slip less tomorrow. The ritual of leaving is quiet and neat. You draw a breath through your nose. The fatty smell still trails you. Warmth in the belly makes each step lighter before sharp flakes. Every leg of the day was hard. Unripe fruit was puckering. Unbattered roots were stiff. Bone tubes were sealed like a refusal from nature. Now the answer has changed. It is not noisy. It is only a crack line in the right place. A root core opening, a strip of meat freed from hide, small axe adding up to a much larger difference than that first dry pop suggested. It is the difference between having the strength to go onto the shade to climb to a safer bough before dark, to watch the children when night hunters begin to move. The sky shifts colour. Red slips behind the high trees. Someone props a dry branch on the anvil to mark this as a known spot. Tomorrow, if the band passes again, they will know where the core was placed. The group rises. Flakes tucked safely between bark and old hide. The core on the strongest shoulder. No one leaves the small anvil behind. They all file out along a track already marked. The story of the meal is not finished. It goes with them to a temporary shelter, to the night when eyes take turns, to the morning when new light falls on the flakes. You look once more at the anvil face in the last glow. Pale smears of bone dust still cling. Crack marks circle the edge like a ring of writing. All of it says one thing. When a sharp flake appears, the meal has a nearer path. No oaths, no banners, only a blow in the right place. And tomorrow, when the sun rises, that meal will begin again with a small crack like a raindrop tapping dry bark. From that sound, we will look more closely at how a band keeps its energy, how they learn to divide and to correct, so the meal does not happen once, but repeats long enough for the group to travel farther through the hard season. Sunlight slants through leaves and falls in patches on the rock anvil. Cool water, a light mud smell, and the scent of marrow still hang in the air. Arms ache less now. Heartbeats are even again after the first meal. No one hurries from the stream. There are small tasks to do for the rest of the day, tasks repeated and each time refined a little more. One person returns to the soaked roots. The dark brown skin peels when a flat flake lifts along the grain. No hard hack is needed, only a slow draw along a fresh crack. Inside is pale flesh, and the bite no longer stings like in the morning. The same root, the same hand. The difference lies in choosing the right edge for the job. A thick edge for pounding, a thin edge for scooping, a point for scoring shallow lines. Those roles have no names yet. Yet whoever holds a flake understands in their own way. At the water's edge, a new stone core is dragged in. It is big and coarse, its face smoothed in places by seasons of water. The holder sets it on the flat anvil, pushes lightly to find the balance. The other hand takes the hammer stone. The first blow is not to detach a flake, but to listen. The knock sounds dull and wrong. The core is turned a little and tried again. This time the tone is a touch clearer. When it feels right, the hammer falls, the anvil lip trembles, a large flake shoots out and drops in the sand. Someone stoops, brushes it clean, lifts it to the light and slides a finger along the edge. It is heavy and thick, good for use as a handheld pounder on tough roots. The core turns again. Another blow, and a second flake breaks off, small and thin, the edge keener. It is set aside for scoring and scooping. There is no cheer, only small nods. At any moment the move could fail. A hammer may strike off line, the anvil slip, the flake not detach, and the core crack uselessly. Everyone stands slightly off the line of fall so a flying flake does not strike their feet. The children watch from shade, fingers rolling a small pebble. They are not allowed the hammer yet they have learned where to stand, when to step back, when to step in and pick up what others missed. At the edge of the sand, one person sits with 3 kinds of flakes laid out. Each edge is tested on different things. Old dry hide, tender shoots, a thin bark shaving. With each try, they change their hand angle and the way they brace. Sometimes a flake slices cleanly, sometimes it only scuffs out dust without cutting. The less useful flakes go in a separate pile. They still serve as shims under the anvil or as chocks to keep a core from rolling. Nothing is thrown away. The small scatter of chips underfoot is the mark that the stream gave something back today. Not far away, a few dry seeds spill from a rough bundle of fruit. The person with the flat flake taps lightly along the seam of each seed to split it. The tiny tick sound even, shells part, kernels show. Not every seed is edible, so they smell and touch the tongue to test. If it seems safe, the elders taste first. If the elders nod, the rest follows. This lesson did not come from speech. It came from passing seasons, from old stomach aches, from an afternoon long ago when someone collapsed for grabbing a strange morsel. Stone helps open the meal, yet the shared memory keeps it safe. At noon the water shines like a scratched mirror. Wind ripples the surface and returns the silhouettes of people bent over the anvil. Above, birds cry in bursts. Someone lifts their head and glances at reed beds where a glide mark lies. A hand slips a pointed flake into the right hold without thinking. No one panics. Each person adjusts their seat and closes the ring with a small hollow in the middle, so the children can slip into it if needed. Watchfulness does not stop the meal. It simply tightens the quiet thread that links them. Across the way, a thick flake is used to crush an old tuber. The holder does not slam straight down. He turns his wrist and lets the broad edge press slowly to make a fine web of fissures. Then he strikes hard so the tuber breaks along lines already made. That way fewer shards fly into eyes, and less time is spent picking up pieces. One day a finger may teach another finger by a touch, and a tilt of the wrist instead of his words. During a short rest, the core bearer sits on the sand and props the core on a knee. With a thin flake he shaves off bumps from the core's face, as if he's clearing a smoother path for later blows. No one calls this teaching. The one next to him watches intently without blinking. At times like this, knowledge moves from hand to eye, from eye into another hand, without a single word. That could be how early craft travelled out, slow, broken, uneven, and lasting. The anvil face grows smooth again, though bone dust and root crumbs stick back to it. Someone stands and scrapes it clean with a poor flake. When the cool rock is bare, they sprinkle a pinch of dry sand and rub lightly so it dries, then set the core again. These small caretakings are not wasted. They keep the next blow from slipping. They let flakes break in good shape. They save effort tomorrow by avoiding fixes. By afternoon, the light swings and tree shadows reach. The band moves the anvil into shade to avoid glare. The new spot lies a few steps from the water on firm ground, with wind off to one side. One person wedges a small stone as a stop to keep the core from rolling. Another spreads a strip of old hide so falling flakes do not chip their edges. Everything is arranged like a drill done many times. We do not know who thought of it first or who copied later, yet the traces let us picture a sequence that has been repeated long enough to become habit. Another bone tube is brought over. They are not always on hand. It may be the remains of another animal's meal. It may be a rare gift from the water after a night of rain. The thick flake is gripped firmly. The end of the tube sets square on the anvil lip. One precise blow. The fracture rings out. This time there's not much marrow, but the spongy inside still has value. It is scraped, rolled into small pellets, and shared in the familiar order. The youngest and the oldest take theirs first. The others chew slowly and still glance at the reed fringe when the wind shifts. A little farther away in short grass, someone tries splitting fibres from bark with a pointed flake. They cut a strip and twist lightly to make a crude cord. It is not strong enough to hang weight, yet it is enough to tie the flakes together so they do not spill during travel. No one taught them how to twist. The hand found a way by turning in one direction, feeling it loose, turning the other, feeling it hold, and remembering it. From stone, something else is born, small and still making life slightly easier. Now and then an arm is grazed. The sharp edge has no mercy. A thin cut beads. Someone brings a damp handful of leaves, presses it on and holds it until the bleeding stops. There is no medicine and no bandage. Only the experience that keeping a wound clean helps it heal. Small scars on wrist and forearm are the school fees for a craft that is growing. A hard gust passes. The water ripples and sand sprays across the anvil. Someone shields a thin flake with their body. Another quickly lifts the core down to the ground. Within a few breaths the world is calm again. Such reflexes come from being here many days, many times. The stream bank teaches the band how to breathe, how to wait, and how to go on at the right moment. Heavy stones help open the meal, and they also force the band to learn division of labour. Broad shoulders carry the core home. Keen eyes choose the anvil. Skilled hands swing the hammer. Calm minds allot shares. Sharp ears listen for wind and sound. Each person steps into the role that fits them by nature. No titles are given. No names are assigned. Yet that dim order steadies the band, especially when everything else shifts too fast. Someone asks a question in the quiet. What else can these flakes do? Can they open thicker hide? Can they break harder seeds? The answer only comes when hands try, when sweat falls, when lips taste. There is no theory. There is trying and remembering. Each success makes the next meal lighter. Each failure adds time to gather shards and reset the anvil. That is the price and the only path. Shadows lengthen. 3 small piles rise on the sand. One pile is thick flakes for pounding. One pile is thin flakes for slicing. One pile is chips that can serve as shims. The core is still big enough for tomorrow. The flat anvil is wiped clean again. Each thing has its place, like stones at a stream mouth that the water has set just so through the years. No notebook records it, yet footprints and bone dust lines stand in for script. Before they leave, one person bends to toss a few poor flakes away to keep the work floor clear for next time. Another spreads old hide and lays the best flakes inside, rolls it, ties it with the cord twisted at noon. The bundle of flakes now looks like a small baton, easy to hold, easy to tuck against the belly while climbing. The core goes on the stronger shoulder. Children walk between two adults. No one rushes. Stomachs are quiet. Minds are clear enough to read the ground. After a stretch you look back. The anvil patch looks like a moon with pitted scars. Pale bone dust lies on it like a thin frost. Everything is familiar and strange at once. Familiar because every day has the rhythm of cracking and pounding and chewing. Strange because within that rhythm one small thing changes each day. It might be how the core is placed. It might be where the divider sits. It might be how the hide is tied. Small changes accumulate over time. No one names them. Yet they are what make today a bit easier than yesterday. When the band fades behind the grass, the bank returns to wind and insects. The anvil is quiet. Yet where on its face says someone will come back tomorrow. They will pick up the hammer again, turn the core again, strike again. They will open marrow and root again, and hand the softest pieces to the weakest first. And if they can, they will save a portion for the next day. From that repetition, energy is gathered and strength is stored. And when there is enough to do more than one meal, the next question will come. Not in words, but in the hand's gesture turning the core in late light. Can we do this better? Can we foresee before we strike? That question will draw the band toward a new ground of knowing where stone not only opens a meal, it opens a way to think. The sun leans and the bank changes colour. Tree shadows pull long like cords around ankles, reminding all that the day is thin. On the anvil, a dull white film of scraped bone clings in streaks. Another bone tube is set on the right lip. A measured blow. A dry crack pops. No one speaks up. A warm, rich smell lifts, light as breath. Marrow is scraped with a thick edge and rolled into small pellets. Elders take first, the youngest next. The rest share the rim and chew slowly to listen to their bodies. No one hurries. The portions are small and well chosen. Beside them, roots that have soaked long enough are pressed flat with a heavy flake and then smoothed through a thin edge to strip fibres. The morning harshness is gone. Tongues do not tire, jaws do not grate. The evening meal is not larger than noon's, yet it is lighter and rounder. On the sand the 3 piles stand clear. One for heavy pounding, one for fine scooping, one for shims under the anvil. The core left is turned once more to take a sounding from the anvil and guess tomorrow's fall. Hands are used to the weight, eyes to the crack lines. There is no name for the technique and there is memory in the muscles. All the motions have settled into the body like a song with no words. Wind shifts over the stream. A dark glide mark slips toward the reeds. Everyone adjusts positions at once. Children edge into the open space in the loose ring. The person on the rim sets a pointed flake at hip height. It is not a threat, only a reminder. Life at the water's edge never permits forgetting. Watchfulness does not spoil a meal. It keeps the guard, quiet and steady. A little later, 2 flakes click together. Someone slips and a sharp edge kisses skin, leaving a thin scratch. A damp leaf is pressed on and dirt brushed off. The cut is shallow. That hand still holds a flake and goes on. Small scars will remain like ruled lines marking what was paid to learn. The hand learns first. Words may come later if they come at all. At the edge of the sand, 2 people try something new. They set 2 roots on the anvil, and instead of striking straight, they press a thick flake slowly in from both sides to start fine cracks along the length. Then they hit hard. The roots break on those lines, fewer splinters fly and more soft core appears. Children watch closely how the wrist angles and how the pressure falls. No one tells them to remember, yet they remember. Someone tries a thin flake on old dry hide. The edge glides for a bit and stops, leaving a hairline. No claims, just a test to see what the edge knows how to do. If a flake is too thick, they swap for another. Stone speaks with sound and with a small drag felt under the finger. When the edge fits the job, the hand will know without thinking. Another hollow bone is picked up. The bank does not always offer things like this. There are days of nothing but chewy roots and sandy seeds. Today, the evening meal has extra fat. An elder's eyes brighten a little. They chew slowly as if to keep the taste in the mouth for tomorrow. The leftover film of marrow is spread thin en route, and the sweetness of fat wraps the coarse nuttiness of plant. It is not much, and it is enough to reassure the body that it can go on tomorrow. Before full dark, the best flakes are wrapped in hide and tied with a twisted strip made at noon. The core goes on a strong shoulder. The anvil is brushed free of sand and chip, so tomorrow's return will not offend the eye. A few poor flakes are thrown away to keep the work face neat. The circular scratches on the anvil are like a day's map that only those here can read. The path home crosses low grass, skims a dry patch, then turns along exposed roots like steps. No one runs, no one shouts. Breaths are even. Steps match the one carrying the weight. Children walk between two adults. One holds the flake bundle. One listens to the wind. One reads tracks. There are no orders. Each person chooses the role that suits their strength. That order is not decreed. It grows from days at the anvil, from time spent dividing small bites, from a need to survive more than to claim credit. Night shelter is a root bank under dense leaves or a rock edge with a hollow. There is no fire. There is no light. Night drops like a huge blanket. Watch is understood at once without a word. One person stays awake until the stars shift. The next touches a shoulder to change places. Elders and the very young lie in the inner ring. The core bearer lies at the edge. The flake bundle rests in the middle against a belly. Night sound, forest damp, and the breath of earth rise slowly. Bellies are not packed. The body feels calmer because the evening was tidy. Jaws do not throb like on days when only fibrous raw roots were gnawed. Bowels do not grumble as before. From such small changes, something hard to say comes into view. When hunger no longer grips every breath, the mind holds a few more moments of clarity. In those moments, memory can replay the crack line running along the core, can store the wrist angle of a blow, can picture which way to turn the core tomorrow so a flake falls as intended. No one says cognition. The seed of forethought is present, faint as starlight through leaves. Night passes, insects take turns on the air. Turning over, a shoulder bumps the hide wrapped around the flakes and the edges lying quiet. That feeling is like holding a promise without sound. Tomorrow, the bank will still be there. The anvil will still be there. The blows will repeat without being identical. A new wrist angle will appear. A better way to shim the anvil will be found. A tighter cord will be twisted. All of it will add up to a small, steady step. Near dawn, the last watcher sees the water dark go grey. They touch the next shoulder. No words. The band sits up, checks the bundle, shakes sand away. Before they go, one glance records the crack lines on the root bank to gauge the wind for tonight. Steps move toward the stream where the anvil waits for the first blow. At the horizon's rim, a question lies ready without words. If a hand can predict the crack, can eyes see the flake before the hammer falls? If today is only striking, can tomorrow be arranged so the pieces fall as foreseen? The question does not keep anyone from sleep. It lies under the skin, warm as a trace of marrow left on the tongue. From a meal opened with heavy stone, from the rhythm of striking and sharing, a new path shows itself. It runs through the memory of hands and eyes and small scars and leads to the place where stone begins to teach people to think before they act. There the story moves into its next part where the mind learns to speak with stone, slowly and surely, growing as it goes. Hands turn the core, eyes wait for the right fall angle. The core's face is darkly lustrous, dusted with sand. On the anvil's flat surface, flattened by countless old blows, pale white streaks cross like palm lines. No one can read writing, yet everyone reads fractures. Every scratch is a memory turned to stone. Every drop of the hammer is a decision. Morning stands still like a large vessel. Inside it are breaths. Insects changing shifts. Feet setting down on sand by habit without thought. The core carrier places the heavy block in its spot and steps back half a pace. The one holding the smaller hammerstone lifts a little, pauses, lowers it lightly to listen. A ringing or a dull note tells which part is hollow, which is solid, which flake will obey. The mind here does not speak out loud. It touches and infers, looks and remembers. A thin beat between intention and action opens whenever the hand stops right before the strike. There is no language for pressing angles or planes of force, yet rules exist in silence. The core should not be too free. The anvil must be firm enough so the fracture travels in the wished direction. The hammer must not be too round if the flake is to have a clean edge. The eye finds a ridge. The hand turns until the ridge meets the sideways light. When the ridge shows like a fine line on a fish's back, when the hammer point can sit on that very rim, The striker draws a breath, holds it in the chest to stiffen the arm, then lets it out with the blow. The crack rings bright. A thick, sharp flake falls. No one claps. People merely tilt their heads a little, as if tipping a cup to watch the surface rise. You bend and pick up the flake that just fell. The surface is still faintly warm from friction. The cutting edge throws a short beam of light. When your finger glides along the rim, you hear the quiet hiss of sand grains being sliced. No one names this feeling. Yet the body knows. A flake for pounding differs from a flake for scooping. A flake that cuts across the grain differs from one that probes along it. Everything rests in the hand, not in the mouth. This is the first language of this place, a tongue without sound that speaks in force and direction. This morning, before the flake fell, there was a very small moment when you stood looking at old fractures. A break veering left hinted that this core would not fall in the usual way. If you kept striking by habit, the flake would chip or come off sulky and blunt, the full angle lost by half. You stepped back and turned the core another quarter turn. That was a decision. No one told you to. No one stopped you. The decision was a move of the mind, light as a leaf landing, yet enough to change the outcome. At the anvil, others take turns. A young one sets the hammer too close to the centre. The flake does not pop, only powder scuffs off. An elder touches the elbow, not a big signal. Only a light hand and a small push. The second time the hammer shifts by a hand span and a flake truly falls. Learning here happens in the short distance between eye and hand. There are no teachers and no pupils, yet there are looks, touches and guiding cracks. Knowledge moves like a dust mote that follows the steady eddy around the anvil. Days like this repeat. Repetition is not stasis. Repetition sharpens. Each loop brings back one more detail to the mind, like fishing up a small shell from the water's edge. Sometimes it is the core's damp or dryness. Sometimes the true flatness of the anvil once sand creeps into rock seams. Sometimes the hammer's size relative to the target. All of it gathers into a score of set pieces. That score is not written. It runs inside the grain of the acts. Set the core, turn it, choose a ridge, catch the light, set the hammer, hold breath, release. This chain does not appear on the first day. It is gleaned step by step, like finding a path through brush by strings of tiny trails. Once the chain settles in, something new happens. Before you strike, you see the flake fall. Image arrives before sound. That is the sign that the mind has moved one beat ahead of the hand. Not everyone has the same chain. Lomekwi is a beginning time. There the flakes do not fall to a single template like later collections. Some cores are moderate, some very large. Some hammers are round, some angular. The anvil is a flat boulder, sometimes just hard ground. One striker today props the core slanted, another tomorrow sets it level. That lack of uniformity is not clumsiness. It mirrors a very early stage when different ways were being tried, kept, dropped, and tried again. There is no unified tool culture. There is only a new tendency just sprouting. Stone is no longer lifted only to bash bones at random. Stone begins to be turned, placed, waited for at the right instant. That is the difference. At the anvil's edge, a child kneels upright, chin on knees, unblinking. Each time a flake falls, its pupils widen a little. Not from glare, but from catching the path of descent in that thin blur between strike and fall. It has no words to tell it. Yet at night, when wind shifts, when small hands hold an old flake, they will turn it unconsciously the very way they saw. Learning here runs through mimicry. Mimicry is how the mind tastes an act before doing it for real. Sometimes the anvil stays quiet. The core is dense. The ridge hides. The hammer hand drops, sets the stone by the foot, looks sideways along the face of rock. Light changes very slowly. On the core a faint grain like wood shows when cloud covers a piece of sun. It is not a fracture line, yet it often leads to one. You set the hammer tip near it, unhurried. Fingers tighten, then slacken. One slow breath. The blow springs. A dry sound. The flake lands on the anvil, slides a short way over the rim and lies still. There is no cheer, only the striker's soft exhale. In that soundless sound, one thing is clear: you chose right. The feeling of a right decision differs from the feeling of a falling flake. It sits deeper and calmer, like placing a stone into a gap in a bank. No one sees it, yet the bank holds a little more firmly, Another day you move the anvil. The old spot has sunk because many strikes hollowed out the soil under the rock. The new anvil sits half a calf higher, flat and prickly. Change the anvil. The entire set piece changes. At first the hammer kisses the anvil and rebounds. The blow goes astray. No flake falls. You do not blame the anvil. You blame the self for not fixing habit in time. Next time the knees drop lower, the arm reaches a little farther so force rides the right line. The flake falls. The new anvil is folded into the score, like adding an instrument to the ensemble. Noon passes on the sand under thin leaves. The piles of flakes take shape. One to pound, one to scoop, one of chips to shim the anvil. Alongside lie unusable pieces kept for a while in case some shim wants them. That saving is part of the mind. Not discarding at once means knowing that decisions can change. Everything here is coarse, yet inside the coarse are fine grains of thought. This season the wind shifts another way. The striker needs to stand left of the anvil to keep dust and chips out of the eyes. A change in stance demands a change of striking hand. The favoured hand is no longer favoured. The first blow trembles, the flake falls awry. You breathe in and let the mind move farther ahead of the hand than usual. You imagine the fall when using this hand. You set the shoulder, change the hip centre, send the arm along a different path. The flake falls as hoped. The hand is no longer the other hand. Yet the score keeps its core, only a few spots change. The mind has grown a little more supple, holding to result rather than to the hand's habit. When the sun tilts, the core's fracture lines look like dry streams stamped into ground. Each stream is a possibility. You do not need to open everyone in a day. Open enough to have flakes for a meal, flakes for tomorrow, a flake for an easy-to-whittle steak, a flake for a root that splits. Knowing when to stop is another decision. It is not as bright as choosing the right ridge, yet it holds the band together. Mind is not only for making a neat fall, mind is also for knowing when to set the core down. Wrap the flakes, clear the anvil, so tomorrow there is a place to stand. Sometimes in a rare cooler gust you think about the first worker who began to turn the core by will instead of striking at random. It may have been a Kenyanthropus platyops individual. It may have been an Australopithecus afarensis individual. Fossil data tosses up those names. Yet the story at the anvil is still only hand and core, anvil and hammer. We should call them the ones who learn to put a decision between hand and stone. That name is enough for tonight. And one night, when sand is cool under your heels, you run your hand over the day's fallen flakes and feel a strange thought. Not a big one. Only a raindrop on skin that then is gone. If the hammer goes here, if the core turns that way, if the anvil is shimmed with that thick chip, perhaps tomorrow the flake will fall like the picture in your head now. The thought comes and goes. Yet next morning at tea, when the anvil shows in thin light, you try. The flake falls like the picture. For a second you feel you and stone have spoken one language. Not the language of the mouth, the language of projection. From that second the set piece is not only a string of moves, it is a small map in the head. Drawn by paths, fractures could take that lead to flakes that could fall. No one here uses the word plan. Yet thinking first and doing after is the firmest part of the day. It leaves no marks like the core's cracks. It leaves only calm in the chest when a flake falls right. That calm spreads to other moves. The way you lay flakes on the anvil for the next person. The way you leave the core in shade rather than in sun to keep its moisture. The way you pick up thick chips to shim the spot that will soon ring. Each small decision adds up to a day with fewer stumbles. Fewer stumbles mean less blood. Fewer chipped flakes. Fewer hissing breaths of disappointment. That is how the mind cares for the body, by quiet, slow detours. The day drifts toward late afternoon. The anvil rests a while. In that pause, a far water sound is clear like a dim bell. You set your palm on a surface worn by uncounted blows. Cold, smooth, soft like nameless pottery. You do not think about a far future. You think only about tomorrow, about ridges not yet opened, about flakes not yet fallen, about small hands that will touch a flake with a natural reverence of the new. Inside the small, something large is growing. Not a brain swelling in a night, only trust in a chain of moves that have proved right. That trust is enough to keep the beat. Keep the beat, keep the people, keep the people, keep the band. You stand, wrap flakes, hold the core, draw a deep breath. Dusty rock still in the lungs. A thin taste like rain on dry earth lingers at the back of the tongue. The path home is so familiar that feet do not need to see. Tree shade will lay a cool layer on your shoulder. Insects will pour into your ear like water. In the chest, the score for tomorrow flickers. No need to speak it. No need to name it. Only keep the breath even. Only remember the feeling of a flake sliding off a core like a tiny star. The mind will arrive a half-beat before the hand again. Another steady day will open. Evening drops like a thin cloth. Light softens. The anvil face stops glaring. This is when hand and eye breathe easiest. You set the core on the anvil, unhurried. Fingers travel the rim, feel the small rasp like fish spines. One slow turn, chin lowers to sight along the stone. Everything in you seems to slow by half a beat so the mind can move farther ahead of the hand. The one beside you says nothing. They set a thick chip by the anvil edge. You understand it as a reminder to shim and quell the tremor. Knowledge here travels by quiet things. A thick chip laid right is worth more than a long speech. You try the first blow. Hammer meets the core's rim, a dry ring. A flake springs. Its edge is uneven, yet one cut face shines. You tilt it in the evening light and see a fine line running the rim like a short thread. This one suits scooping. You put it on the scoop pile. The whole day gathers into 3 clear streams, pounding flakes. Scooping flake ski shims. A child comes closer with a shaking hand. It grips the hammer too near the head, weight dumping into the wrist. You touch the hafter lightly and slide the hand back. No words. The second blow is better. The flake is not large, yet the edge is sharp enough to cut a thin bark from a tough root. The child looks up with eyes bright like seeing a bird land on the right branch. Learning here is in those bright looks, not in long lessons. Sometimes things do not go as wished. You choose the wrong ridge. The blow skids. The hammer nose scrapes the anvil. A flake's edge explodes. The crack is shriller than usual. Silence drops for a beat. Then the elder picks up the broken flake and sets it near your foot. He does not scold. He leaves it there as a marker. This mistake will come back to the mind when you place the hammer next time. To remember. Remember to change. No punishment, no talk. Stone teaches with the voice of stone. Wind swings. Dust pricking eyes says the anvil should turn another notch. You change stance. Feet shift only a little, yet the force line changes. The hammer passes from right to left hand. The whole body must learn a different throw. You try and fail and try again. On the third, the flake jumps off in the shape you held in the head. In that short second, it feels like skipping a pebble one more time across water. The feeling is not loud, yet it lasts. It keeps the mind steady for the rest of the afternoon's work. Near the anvil stands another larger boulder with an uneven face. Someone tries it as an anvil. Core down, hammer falls, the flake flies wrong. Another experiment. They turn the core so its back fits the lumps and hollows. This time the flake springs on a diagonal. Not perfect, yet proof that a non-flat anvil can work if the core is turned into the groove. The circle around watches once through. No one speaks a concluding line, yet starting tomorrow, if the flat anvil is busy, someone will seek the lumpy face and turn the core the way they just learned. The new way does not become law, it is kept in shared memory. You carry the fresh flake to the water's edge. The rim grazes the bark grain of a root dug this morning. The cut runs surprisingly smooth. Eye remembers hand, hand remembers ridge, ridge remembers hammer. The chain closes like an unseen cord. An elder passes you a dry bone tube. They do not tell you to cut meat, and you do not try to prove anything. You tap the flake's edge on the tube end. The hollow rings. You turn the flake, set the sharp edge on the fine line of the bone cap, tap twice more. The bone cracks. Fat scent opens like a warm thread of air. Eyes only sway a little. No cheers. The taste was known before from randomly found stones. Today differs in that you place the edge on the easy line by design. That is the difference between using and making. A small difference and enough to think with. The sun drops lower and tree shadows stretch long and straight like lines of notes drawn on ground. You tidy the anvil. The core is still heavy. The hammer still warm in the hand. The flake's enough. A few bad pieces are kept to shim other anvils. The only thing thrown away is the cord of tension. No one wants to carry it to sleep. Every day has loose parts. Cleaning the anvil ties those parts together so tomorrow is a chain, not a tangle. On the way home, the young carry the core, the elder bears the hammer, others share the leaf-wrapped flakes. The band walks in line not because of rules. The path is narrow, grass tall, and eyes must read tracks. Footfalls on sand have a beat. It is the same beat as the morning's flaking. The body likes repeats. Repeats lighten the mind. Then the mind is free to keep small details like core ridges, flake thickness, anvil position. Once everything's familiar, you can think a little farther without losing your way. In shelter, darkness gathers. Without fire, the night is full. Work must stop earlier. The mind does not sleep at once. Reviews the day like turning small stones in the palm. A beautiful fall, a skewed blow, a swap of hands, a ridge opened by the right turn. Every memory piece glides by neat, not tangled. The feeling proves something important. Making is not only the arm's force. Making is the habit of recall. Remember right and tomorrow hits less hard. Remember wrong and tomorrow bleeds again. An elder exhales softly. He places an old flake in a child's hand. No words, only a passing on. Knowledge needs no right. It goes from large hand to small hand with the exact weight of a stone. The child closes its fingers and feels the edge like a cold stream. It will forget for a time, then remember in the morning when the anvil appears. This way of passing is slow and sure. It does not produce identical flakes over generations. It produces the habit of asking before striking. That habit is the mind's closest shelter. Night deepens. Insects layer the dark like a thin blanket. You lie on your side, arm across your belly, hand still carrying the smell of stone. In your head the anvil appears like a dim bright patch of ground under cloud. On it a core and hammer and a flake that will fall. You do not know if the wind will turn or the anvil will shake tomorrow. You know where you will stand, how you will set the hammer, how you will turn the core. The image is not as clear as daylight, and it is enough to quiet the body. Sleeping to that point is enough. Another morning will come, and the way people step to the anvil, set the core, shim the rock, turn the ridge will be alike and not alike. Alike in the shared beat. Not alike in the small adjustments felt only by those inside the work. These are starting days, so no common denominator is stamped. There is no steady mould like later elsewhere. That does not dim the worth of each blow. It clarifies a truth. Even before a clear tool tradition exists, the mind has learned to arrange action in a sequence. That is the first step of agency, the first step of placing oneself between nature and choosing a piece of it to bend. When you think about who first turned a core that way, you only press your lips. It may have been a Kenyanthropus platyops. It may have been an Australopithecus afarensis, as scattered bones suggest. Names are for remembering, not for claiming too much. What is certain is the tiny pause between hesitation and blow has been here. It has no name and it changes results. That alone is enough for tonight's story. Tomorrow morning, when you set the core and hold half a breath, that pause will open again. Another flake will fall, sharp like a scrap of star. Evening leans in. Without fire, the air thickens and every sound comes close. Insects murmur like a thin cloth laid over grass. On the ground, flakes shine quietly in a faint line of moon. The group sits closer than usual, not to talk, only to hear their hearts ease after a day of eye and hand. In the ring centre, a small flat earthen anvil is kept clear. No one strikes now. The anvil is quiet, like a river at rest. The mind is not. The elder points a finger at the three piles, different break angles, different thicknesses. He does not lecture. He touches each, stops on one with a brighter edge. He tilts it so the moon slides across. All eyes follow and nod very slightly. A nameless lesson just circles the ring without voice or rule, carried by a small tilt of the hand. One child sleeps from weariness. Another still wakes. It lifts a round pebble to its palm and copies the elder's gesture. No one calls right or wrong. Everything in this phase is still loose, like a water trace after rain. The band only needs to keep the chain of acts clearer day by day, unbroken. Tomorrow when the anvil warms, the child will know where to set the core, so force travels right. Knowledge passes like that, no lesson, only feelings strained, repeated, made steadier each day. Nearby, someone sets side by side two flakes that fell from two different ways of striking. One edge is ragged, the cut scatters crumbs, good for opening hard shells. The other is thinner, a fine line runs long, good for scooping along the grain. Both are rough, no form repeats exactly. There is no shared shape enough to call a stable culture. The only repeat is the sequence in the head and ridge, turn core, hold breath, drop hammer, tilt flake into light. That sequence sharpens the mind, though the tools stay as coarse as big shards. Night stretches. A strange bird calls far away. Everyone leans an ear without thinking. Without fire, the ear does the eyes part. After a few beats, the sound dies. Breaths return to even. Before fire, night watch is a habit of survival. No one says the word guard, and each keeps a watch segment in the head. The same way each keeps a half-beat pause before the day's blow. Such small self-command stitches the band together. You sit with your back against clay. Both palms still smell of dry stone. With eyes shut, you can still see the dim anvil face, the grey ridge on the core, the hammer nose nearing the point chosen. The feeling does not wake you, it lulls you. Once the mind is used to the sequence, it goes quiet, like walking a path with the grass already cut. Tomorrow the hand will grope less. The path is already open in the head. Sometimes you think of the name of the first worker who held breath a little longer before striking. It may have been Kenyanthropus platyops. It may have been Australopithecus afarensis. Bone hints say so. The name is only a leaf stuck to a branch. The branch is the pause of half a beat that sends force right. The pause has no name and needs no words, and it separates random use from planned making. Near midnight, someone shifts to ease a cold back. They pull a bundle of leaves closer. Beside them sits a thick flake kept as a shim, not thrown away. Everything around the band seems to have a role: good flakes to scoop, bad flakes to shim. The core carries tomorrow. The anvil carries the sequence. The leaf bundle keeps heat, the footfall keeps time. When everything is just enough in place, the band speaks less. Where it is wrong, stone speaks with a break. Where it is right, hands know by a fine line under the skin. One thing stirs, no dispute, sharp flakes change the meal. Not a total change, and not every day a tube of bone to tap. When a tube does open, fatty marrow keeps bellies full longer. When a tough root checks, chewing is less brutal. Teeth and jaws carry less load that day. Children eat the soft. Elders are not left behind. No one speaks of a far future. No one debates how teeth or gut will change after many generations. What the band knows here and now is this today hurts less, and tomorrow there is strength to go on. You lift your gaze. Without fire or star show, the quiet makes every thought stand sharp. You recall how the flake fell as intended after switching hands this morning. Rarely does a small adjustment change the entire feeling. It turns out the mind need not always do big things. It only needs to remember very clearly small things in the right order. That is how it grows without noise. Forest cocks call thinly. Dew paints the ground before the cave. Bodies turn. Hands feel for the flake laid beside them last night. No one wants to start from nothing. Each keeps a little habit and puts it in place. That is how the band avoids repeating mistakes. No one aims to produce one identical type of flake. Everyone only hopes the hand slips less than yesterday. The anvil shakes less than yesterday. The angle deviates less than yesterday. When dozens of small efforts move one way, the long day is smoother. You go to the anvil and set the core, check the flatness by eye. You wedge a poor flake under the rim so the core does not slide. Tilt your head, follow the ridge, breathe deep, hold, drop the hammer. The knock is dull and short. The flake jumps and lands near your toes. Its edge is not perfect and the bright run along it is long enough to work. You put it on the scoop pile. No need to grin. One tiny piece in the chain has clicked. That is enough to loosen the chest. Not far away, two young people are trying a new core placement based on what they saw yesterday. The first blow is not as hoped. They stop, change the angle, turn the core. The second blow is better. The flake falls on a slant, the rim is not clean, and a stretch of fine edge appears. They look at each other, do not speak. Then place the flake in the right pile. The habit of sorting keeps small efforts from being lost. By noon, the piles will retell the entire morning without a single report. At mealtime, an old bone tube is brought out. You tap it with a thick flake. You scoop with a fine one. Melted fat drips slowly into a stone hollow and is portioned by eye. Children take the easiest share, elders take the warm share. Each gets a piece, no more, no less. Once stomachs are lined, eyes grow less sharp-edged. No one speaks of grand surmise. There is only this small truth: the meal is rounder thanks to stone. By afternoon, the wind turns. Sand flies. The anvil must turn. You and another person rotate it a notch. The core is set again. All these changes force the body to learn a new beat. No one minds. Everyone is used to changing small things to protect the larger thing, the sequence, and the simple goal. A few more flakes fall. The band picks, sorts, stacks. The day goes on. When the sun slips behind the trees, you see the 3 piles higher than in the morning. A hard-to-name feeling rises in the chest, both light and deep. Not a loud joy. A quiet satisfaction at seeing mind and limbs move in the same beat. Even without fire, the stones have given the band another centre to gather around the anvil and the chain. There, people watch each other work and adjust their own way. Lessons travel from either hand, from hand to memory, from memory to the next day. Night will drop again. The band will lie close again. On old ground, the sharp flakes lie still. No one knows whether tomorrow's flakes will fall beautiful or ugly. Everyone knows the way to try again, to fix and to go on. In these very early days, the mind already speaks with stone in a scriptless tongue. It is simple look, wait, strike, look back, keep what is right. From that simple place, the meal grows less harsh, jaws tire less, and energy is freed for a longer thought. No need to hurry to name the results that will come. Only look hard at the present small hands learning to set flakes in the right spot. Pairs of eyes learning to pause half a beat before they act. You breathe in the familiar smell of dry stone, the smell of sun-warmed earth, the smell of skin that has walked all day. In the chest, the heartbeat is even like the morning's blows. Everything settles. The mind is quiet, ready for the next stretch of a very long journey, where the body will feel the difference after each gentler meal. And where rough stone will keep opening a path for tomorrow. Jaw eases after a meal ground with care. The relief comes slow, like mist sliding over grass. The band sits in a half circle on level earth. Before them, a stone hollow shows smears of old fat and a crust of root meal. A few Lomekwi flakes lie side by side. A thick one for pounding, one with a fine rim for skimming, a big core kept for tomorrow. Morning begins with stone meeting stone. No hurry. One person holds an old hollow bone from a wild beast. Another raises the heavy pounding flake. They share a brief look. The blow lands with a dull thud. A crack opens. Another stroke. The bone breathes a thin, fatty scent. You take the fine flake and draw the marrow into the hollow. A slick shine creeps along the rim. Children's eyes go wide. The elders edge closer. No one speaks. Yet the circle's breathing grows calm. The next dish is a tough root dug from shaded ground. The skin is coarse, the tang sharp. Hateful to chew if left whole. The heavy flake drops in steady rhythm. The root crazes into slabs. The fine flake follows, shaving the fibres loose. Pale powder falls like soft rain and gathers in a small heap. The preparer flicks a little water to moisten it. You pinch a lump and feel the root giving way. A familiar promise rises in the jaw. There will be less ache today. The sharing is plain. Children take the softest portion, slicked with a faint smear of marrow. The elders get the warmer part, set close to the hollow so the chill lifts. The one with a hurt leg receives an extra bit of root ground fine. Those who strike and pound eat no more and no less than others. The only difference is how near they sit. Everything runs smooth because no one claws for tough pieces to parade their strength. With sharp stone at hand, a meal is no longer a contest of jaws and muscle. You try a bite. The root crumbles. Marrow spreads on the tongue like a slender ray of sun. The jaw need not clamp as on days with no flakes. The tongue no longer forces the fibres forever. Chewing slows. The head loosens. The belly accepts the food more kindly. You look around. Every face is gentled. No one must hold breath against a choking lump. No one laughs loud, yet eyes are softer. A meal that soothes the body soon softens the mind. Once they're fed enough, someone passes the fine flake to a child. The child turns it and copies the scraping along the leftover root. The rough saw of stone rasps on the skin. The flake is far from perfect, yet good enough to pry fibres free. The elder watches and gives a small nod. Knowledge moves by gesture and small sound. Each right stroke spares the next meal a measure of strain. Each wrong stroke teaches the hand to pull back. You lift your gaze toward the stream bank. Wild seeds cling dry after the wind season. A few small fruits still green. Before pounding became custom, such things often went only to the eye. Jaws and teeth could not master the hard shell. The stomach accepted a light hunger as the law of the day. Now a heavy flake in the fist opens doors once thought shut. Seeds grind into meal. Tough roots consent to fall apart. Sealed bone gives up marrow. The belly grows even. The head keeps a little space for work beyond chewing. The sun climbs. The band lies on their sides under a sparse crown of shade. No one sleeps deep, for there is watching to do. There is no more teeth gnashing in dreams from jaws worn raw. The jaw slackens. The back releases. You hear birds call in little runs. Your fingers find the fine flake beside your hip without thinking. Something has shifted. Not a grand rite. Only a new habit of the fingers. Set the flake in the right place so the next meal comes easy. By midday, another bone tube arrives. Dry strings clinging to it tell of a carcass that lay at the edge of the flats. No one sneers. A hollow bone still holds marrow. You set it on a natural anvil and shim it with a thick, ugly chip. The striker changes hands so the drop will not veer. One crisp crack in the shell parts. Fat scent rises. The child laughs with the eyes. The elder blinks as if a sting has eased. You draw the marrow into the hollow. Then you pause a beat. Not from weariness, but to keep some for the evening. Marrow keeps longer than spoiled meat. Ground root keeps a while. This slowing stretches the meal across the day in little pulses and wards off sudden hunger. The body is spared the cramp and the fret. The head is spared the tug of want against lack. Flesh and thought carry the same even beat. The elder tells the child to chew very slow. He taps the corner of his mouth and shows how. No words needed. Gentleness warms the belly rather than shocking it. The flake has softened the food. The chew teaches the body to take it in small waves. Together they make a steady fullness. When fullness holds, steps spring easier. Eyes look farther. The day runs long, but no longer beyond strength. Toward evening the band gathers the flakes in a dry spot. Pounders below. Fine flakes above. The core leans against a trunk. You lay a dry twig across the pile by habit, to keep the pieces from sliding in the dark. No one orders it. A body less worried tends its few tools better. Thought unwraps enough to notice small things. Your hand can add one more task after eating without sourness. That is a sign of spare strength, not for show, but to feed useful repeats. You sit and listen to the jaw muscle. There is no burning as on days spent gnawing fibre. The tongue is not numb from scraping hide. The head is light and the eyes cool. There is another fatigue, the arms born of blows. Yet the arm's ache passes quicker than the jaws. The jaw's ache sits like a stone on the nape all day. The arm's ache is a pebble in the palm. You drop it and it is gone. The band sees the same. They change the striker. They change hands. They rest a short while between two bones, all to keep time and spare any one part from ruin. You recall the old days. Roots refused to break. Bone showed nothing. A meal was a contest. Strong jaws swallowed. The weak endured hunger. Children cried when fibre stuck in the throat. Elders leaned back, eyes filmed by fatigue. Now such scenes grow rare. Children receive the soft part. Elders take the crumbled. A band becomes steadier without shouting. Keep the meal from pushing anyone out of the ring, and the ring holds. There are still unlucky days. Sometimes no bone can be found. Sometimes roots dug up are bitter. A flake breaks on a bad line. Even so, Lomekwi flakes give a place to grip and turn the day. You can change the strike. You can strip the root thinner. You can keep a pellet of meal from the day before. Without tools, the cold of hunger whipped the face. Now the cold remains, yet a thin cloak lies between. Not full warmth, yet less sting. The sky dims. Without fire, the dark drops like a rough blanket. The band eats no more. They listen to their own bellies. No one moans. A long breath moves through the circle. You set a palm on your stomach and feel the faint heat of marrow and ground root. The heart beats even. Lids close without weight. One last image holds. The ring of root meal on the hollow's lip. The fine flake safe in shadow. The child's small smile after the final mouthful. Night comes. The watcher listens hard. Wind, leaves, a distant beast. There is no fire to stiffen courage. There is only an honest evening meal that lets the body stand still at vigil. No one writhes with a twisting gut. Waking and sleeping share more evenly. A body less hungry keeps its promise better. Rise at dawn and strike. Hold the hand steady. Make a meal enough that the child will not cry. Inside this long strip of dark, a deeper sense settles. A stone flake does not turn the world at once. It nudges all things toward kinder ground. It nudges the jaw. It nudges the belly. It nudges the mind. These little nudges add up to a long step that goes unnoticed while it happens. Freed from the yoke of chewing and swallowing, the body grants the mind a longer look at anvil, core and angle. Such spare time was once denied. You sleep. In your dream there is no tooth grind. Only the faint note of stone and the soft drop of marrow like a rain bead. Tomorrow you will sit your old spot. The flake will wait. The jaw will be warm. The chew will be slow. The band will pass another day with bodies less punished by rough food. From that small root larger branches may grow. Tonight keep only a simple truth. The body has learned a new pace by way of a sharp edge. The new pace is calmer, steadier, enough for all to close their eyes in peace. Dawn pales after a night without fire. Dew films the grass, cold as stone breath. The band stirs in their known rhythm. Before fetching water, they check the flakes, pounders below, fine flakes above, the core propped slant against a great tree. You run a fingertip along the edge and feel tiny nicks like saw teeth. There is no fine whetstone here. There is only the choice of a new strike, so the next fall gives a fresh edge good enough. Younger hands ask to try. The elder speaks no word. He sets the core on a flat rock and turns it until the vein runs across as desired. He points to his own eyes, then to the vein. The lesson is to wait. A rushed blow yields heavy grit and a dull rim. A timely blow drops a flake fit for shaving. The child grips the hammerstone, breathes, lets it fall. A dull note. The core sheds a thick chip. The child does not fade. Second time, a new hand and angle. A flatter flake falls, thick here, thin there. Not pretty, yet sharp along one stretch. The elder nods. Today's meal has gained another useful edge. People spread along the footpath by the bank. One group digs roots in the cool shade. Another works the brush edge for old bone. You and another wade the shallows, sifting soft mud for wind-shaken seed. Each dish was once trouble. Roots hoarded grit. Seeds wore husk like armour. Bones kept a secret. Nothing opened for bare teeth. A heavy flake and a fine flake turn each into a door that yields. At the root patch you set your stance. One knee to earth and one hand holding the root. The other drops the pounding flake lengthwise. Crosswise blows mush the root without splitting. Longwise blows run the split with the grain. Once the root opens, the fine flake rides the fibre and strips thin ribbons. The snap of fibre sounds like dry leaves. At the bank, seed heaps on a broad leaf. You tip them onto a wet stone anvil. The pounding flake drops in even time until the hulls give. After some hundreds of beats, the big seeds are a mash of husk and meat. The fine flake rakes the husks aside. The task repeats, yet the body is no longer spent on useless chewing. The strength goes to the hand and the head is left free. Near noon a short call skims from the brush. All grow still. A scavenger wheels. No one runs. The band tightens in, heavy flakes close to the ribs, fine ones tucked behind. There is no choice to fight. There is distance. The trick of a larger shape and a wait until the beast turns aside. No fire to chase it. No far-reaching weapon to frighten it. Your heart drums, yet the belly is not a knot as on raw food days. A quiet gut steadies the feet. Steady feet steady the gaze. The beast samples the wind and drifts away. The band exhales. Work resumes as if never broken, only more wary. Midday meal plays out on a flat that keeps the shade of an old tree. The stone hollow sits at the centre. Roots lie peeled into strings. Seeds are ground to damp meal, a bone tube arrives, the fatty scent quiet yet clear. The share follows rules never spoken. The very young first, then the old, then the wounded. The strong divide, the rest evens, as you step back half a pace and wait your turn. The fine flake pushes little fans of meal into cupped hands. Marrow is spread thin to help it down. No one crowds, no one chides. Only breath drifting with the scrape's soft beat. You chew slow. The tongue finds root meal mixed with marrow smoother than yesterday. The jaw no longer braced. Fullness does not crash then fade. It soaks and holds. The body no longer sends a cry at noon. The head clears. You notice the sky's colour changing on the face of the anvil. The pass of a wing shadow over your hand. When teeth no longer shrieked, small sounds of the world find their way in. A child coughs after a hurried swallow. The elder's hand floats to the chest and lowers the breath. The lesson is plain. Chew slow and the throat will not tear. Be measured and warmth meets the belly kindly. Stone has softened the food. People must set the rhythm. Each child who learns a habit removes one night cry. One less cry gives someone a longer sleep, even if only a little. After eating, no one leaps for another task. They tidy, not a ceremony of neatness, only small moves in the right places. A knob of dry grass scrubs the fine flake to lift the faint fat skin. The hollow tips and water rinses through. Spare root meal is rolled into a small pellet and kept at the rim for a sudden hunger. The gestures are enough. No one is haunted by clean for its own sake. No one lets a flake slide into mud. The elder points once. Tomorrow another hand remembers. Toward dusk the band test a curious trick. They lay a thick branch crosswise, wedge a core under one end, and drive the other end with a hammerstone. The lever splits the core along a new path. The trick has failed often. Today the break gives a rare flake, flatter and longer, with a smooth run of edge. Hands pass it around with no cheers, yet hold it a moment longer. You shave root with that edge. Fibres flee like hair before a comb. The time halved. The hands rest more. The jaw will sleep tonight. Soon after, the new flake chips on bone. No one blames. Flakes are born to wear. When they do, the band returns to the old angles. A strange pulse shows itself inside the repeats. What breaks is made again. What chips is turned another way. Not because a law was taught. The body now holds spare energy to learn more, try more, and pay for a few extra errors without collapse. On the way to the night ground, the pace is slow. Everyone carries something. The strong shoulder, the heavy core. Small hands keep the fine flake. The child hugs a bunch of stripped roots. The elder uses a dry staff while the earth stays damp. No hand hangs empty. The common feeling is of bearing a day that is enough. Not as heavy as raw food days, not as thin as hungry days. Enough so that supper is no longer a fight against one's own body. At the ground, flakes rest in the driest corner. A tangle of branches above blocks dew, leaves pad the floor below. You lie on your side and watch the flakes like small gnawed moons. A child touches a flake and flinches from the edge. The child looks to you. You nod. The child learns to hold the thick side. Tomorrow the grip will be true. The next day the child will strike. The week after might bring a good flake. No matter. New flakes will fall. What matters is that the rhythm never stops. Night descends and bellies hold their warmth across the ring. Something shifts in the far dark and the circle stays stone still. No one panics. The watcher sharpens his ear. The rest breathe through the nose and let it go slow. In the mind there is no rattle of teeth. Only a steady heart. Even fear changes shape. Not the pounding surf of an empty gut, but a thick dark the band has learned to listen to. They listen to endure, not to posture. Next day brings a brief rain. The anvil is slick, the core wet. Seeds clump to paste. The band drags flakes close to trunks. You roof them with broad leaves. Pounding shifts. Rather than grind seed, they strip roots and search dry shells for bone. Lunch lacks meal, but marrow makes up. Flakes let the band bend dishes to weather. No more stubborn gulps of slippery seed and the choke that follows. The body is spared from forced folly. By afternoon, sun snaps back. The band returns to the anvil. The elder sets the core on warm stone and waits for the skin to dry. No one thinks to bake the core to change its nature. They do not know heat as a tool. They only want less slip for a truer blow for a better edge. These crumbs of sense gather into a small store, enough for the day. Hard seasons teach as well. A newcomer from the forest's edge once brought a bone still soft and ignored its taint. He struck fast and swallowed fast. Half a watch later his gut folded. His face went pale. The band sat close, waiting the storm to pass. No one scolded. The elder opened a fresher bone and skimmed a thin run of a marrow to feed him. The lesson entered the next meal. Smell and touch and delay. A flake opens food, yet knows an eye must lead. No tool outruns deep habit. Another day a child held a fine flake wrong and nicked a finger. Blood beaded. The child clenched and kept still. The mother did not snap. She lifted the hand into her lap and showed the thick side. The whole band watched without a word. In such moments stone teaches the band. A sharp edge can cut at once. A right hold can prevent the cuts to come. As meals grow kinder, tempers ease. The band learns to slow before doing. Bodies record the quiet changes. A callus thickens where the fingers grip the flake and no longer tears like last month. The shoulder holds strain like leather rather than iron. The lower jaw complains less. Night grinding fades. Eyes clear. No one names the future or calls it a path. There is only the feeling of waking with a head lighter than the day before. That is enough to keep repeating the learned moves. On a still evening you sit and watch worn flakes side by side. They differ in shape, thickness and scars. No pieces are mould. No shared standard exists. Each flake is one blow and a brush with luck or skill. Yet they all grant one gift. They keep time for the meal. They keep time for the body. They give the band a few extra breaths without haste. In those breaths, one person shows another a better angle. A child studies the veins. An elder closes his eyes without fear of choking. As the dark thickens, you hear late birds calling over the canopy. There is no fire and no long tail. A few sounds recall the day. Fibres snapping. Seeds breaking. Bone cracking. Flakes falling into grass. Each small sound is a dot in a script no one can read. The band knows the meaning. Eat with the wisdom of the hand and the body is spared. Spare the jaw, the gut, the head. You draw dry branches closer to blunt the wind. Belly warm and calm, lids heavy. Before sleep you remember one task for dawn. You will move the anvil to the stone by the water, because today's face is cupped too deep. Blows fall false on a hollowed face. Change the anvil and flakes fall differently. Change the anvil and tomorrow may ease a little. Such small changes feed a band without any grand design. Night runs. You sleep. On the grass, the flakes lie still. In the dark, the band's pulses hold even. Not because anyone is stronger than the beasts. Because from meal to meal, the body is less punished by rough food. That small quiet lays a thin ground for the day to come. From that ground, the band will try a few new grips, a few new angles, a few new shares. All roads bend back to one plain point. The body changes pace by way of a sharp edge. When the pace shifts, the band shifts with it. Tomorrow they will walk the bank again. The core will turn. New flakes will be born. The meal will be divided. Errors will be mended. Little cuts will be leaf-bound. Each small sign carries the band forward without a cry. At the end of another long day, when you lay the fine flake in a dry place, you will know why the band still stands here. Not because luck never breaks, because they learn to stop hurting themselves first. From there, the rest becomes possible. You breathe in slow. Listen around. Let go. The last of supper settles easy. The head lies still as water. The flake rests by your hand. That is enough to cross into another night. When dawn returns, the story resumes at the old anvil with a new angle, a slow measure that never loses time. Evening softens like a shallow riverbed. The washed flakes lie dry on a bed of leaves. All know their stomachs will not twist tonight. When hunger does not growl, hands tremble less. There are no sparks behind the eyes when one stands in haste. The day has room for long, slow breaths. Supper starts with familiar moves, the hollow set straight, root meal piled to one side, a split bone and the scent of marrow carried on a small wind. Children are served first, elders next. Those with hurt hands and shoulders receive the softer parts. Few words, only the hush of a fine flake skimming spoonfuls, the faint tap of tongue on teeth. Small sounds spread pebbles on the night path so each foot falls sure. You take the first mouthful, chew slow. Warmth gathers at the lips. The jaw does not plead. The back unwinds. The body knows the bite was opened by stone and not by desperate clamping. Fullness rises like water seeping through dry earth. No surge, no flood, quiet sufficiency only. With the belly at ease, the head clears. You hear a night mouse slip through the hay at the edge of the ground. You hear distant water. You hear the breath of the one beside you. These sounds were always there. Tooth grind and pounding hearts had covered them. Now they return to their places. The world is not louder. The body no longer shouts. The child fumbles the fine flake and nearly drops it. The mother sets a palm on the wrist and resets the grip. You see it in a heartbeat. No scold, no snatch. Only a nudge to the thumb and a turn of the flake's nose. Tomorrow the motion will be right. A cut avoided. A night cry spared. Small things added together become a wider piece. After supper the band sits in a wide ring on grass. No fire in the middle. The centre is the heap of cores and flakes. The elder raises a core and shows the slant of a blow across it. He taps a vein, then draws the coming crack in the air. A young one bites his lip, nods and tries another stone. A flake falls, sometimes thick, sometimes thin, sharp here, blunt there. There is no praise or blame. Eyes record. This is not a rule yet. It is a habit repeated until hand and eye understand. Night arrives and wind turns. Beasts pass farther off. The watcher lies on a hip with a hand near the pile. The smell of damp earth soothes you. Belly warm, lids falling. In the blur between waking and sleep you see past days as a chain. Set the core, brace the anvil, choose the angle, strike, pick up the flake, strip root, grind seed, crack bone, skim the share. Each act locks into the next. A slow measure learned by heart. That measure holds the band together through days of shifting winds. Next morning brings a fine rain. The ground is slick, the anvil wet. The band turns to labour that suits the weather. Less seed grinding, more root stripping, bone from high dry ledges. They move as if they had agreed, though no one spoke. Rain weighs the hands, no one sours from hunger. The fine flake keeps its course down the root. Lunch leans on marrow and skimps on meal. Bellies stay calm. The rain clears. Work returns to the old ground. The rhythm does not break. A day comes when the band walks farther. Big roots are scarce nearby. Tall grass combs the skin. Stomachs do not shout. Steps hold pace. Children take turns hugging the bundle of stripped roots. The strong share the heavy cores. Small hands carry the fine flake in a leaf bag for meal. The band is a wordless file. At Thornbrush, the lead pulls a branch. The next holds it for the one behind. No one waits long. No one runs for fear of missing supper. Stone has allowed the line to go slow and sure. At a new bend, a bone lies half buried in sand. Noses work before judgment. The smell is sound. Old bite marks show. The elder taps for brittleness and only then brings the heavy flake down. Bone opens and the scent of marrow is plain. These rules are not written. They live in hands and noses. They are the slight fence that guards a band in a strange place. By late day they raise a quick roof of branches and spread dry leaves. Flakes go to the high corner away from dew. You sit and draw a fine flake with a worn rim, using the live stretch of edge to shave the last strings. Motions even. Heart even. No one speaks of grand matters. A short laugh comes when a child scoops too deep and powders his nose. The laugh is brief, yet present. The presence of laughter marks a little spare energy for self-soothing. Another time someone's old jaw hurt returns. Before, a day like this would bring hard moans and a skipped meal. Now the fine flake turns his share into a thin broth. Others press more marrow his way. He eats slow. The pain holds. He sleeps that night. He walks next morning with the band. No one claims stone saved a life. There is only the sense that the band took a bend without losing a soul. You note quiet shifts in your body. The palm's pad is thicker where it grips the flake and does not tear as before. The shoulder bears strain as leather, not iron. The eyes learn stone veins in shade. The ears tell right bone crack from idle stone chip. No one names these skills. They grow like roots sinking unseen. They are born of kinder meals and days less wild. Lean times teach rhythm too. Once seed ran so thin that shares did not fit habit. The band changed at once. No seed grinding after dusk. Strip roots only. Thin the marrow to stretch it. The hungrier receive one more spoon. Those still steady hold back for morning. No quarrels, no theft. When seed returns, the old way returns is not a decree. Only a way to keep hearing one another's hearts at night. You start to find thin spare hours at day's end. Only a few breaths before the night wind cools. In that sliver, the elder lifts a core and names the good blows with his finger, not his tongue. He points at a stray crack and explains with emotion, "You learn with eyes and the dull note and the shock up the wrist. Tomorrow you try on another core. It may break poor. It may go right. A mistake no longer ruins the day. Supper is less cruel now. In those minutes the band teaches children what not to eat. This leaf numbs. That fruit is far too bitter. That bone smells wrong. No verdicts. Touch and smell and a dab on the tongue, then spit. Lessons slide straight into habit. A body that is not driven to the edge remembers longer. Mistakes fade. On a hard wind evening, a scavenger comes close. The band closes ranks. Heavy flakes braced by the one at the front. No lunging and no boasts. They drift to the great roots of a tree and put backs to wood. The beast scents the air and eyes gleam. No fire to drive it, yet the ring is tight and quiet. The human smell is many and the breaths hum in time. The beast turns away. Such ways were known before. They hold stronger now that hunger does not tear the band. Next day they return to the old ground. The flake pile rests in the dry corner. New flakes will join. Worn ones will go to the edge. Heavy cores lie like markers. As shadows grow, you see a quiet change. There is no fire in the centre, yet the stones have become the day's heart. People gather there to look and touch and remember. The ring is no rite yet. It shows that an invisible thing is passing, from hand to hand and eye to eye and shared breath. You step aside to see the shape. Children sit close to the earth with eyes nearest the flakes. Elders lean back a little to watch the hands of the young. The middle ones weave, ready to pass a flake when needed. No one leads. No words. Knowledge runs like water through roots. Stone opened the meal and cleared a space for this. Your body makes a new habit before sleep. Fingers trace the flake you keep beside your rest, feeling each nick and marking the live stretches in your mind. At first light you will use that very stretch for the first job. A wordless note is kept between palm and skull. It needs no voice and goes straight into motion. Night lowers again. The wind carries earth and dry root. Breath grow even. The band lies as if on a cloth woven of blows and cuts and peelings and shares and fixes. You cannot see the cloth. All of you can feel it. It holds a tender warmth. It soothes. It says tomorrow there is room to repeat the moves that saved the band from the harshest hunger. Grey dawn. You rise before a few. Your steps do not creep. Surprise is less feared. Your hand moves by habit to the dry corner and finds a flake. The day begins. Core on anvil. Eyes find the vein. The heart takes a slow, steady count. You lift your face to the sky for one breath and greet a known road. Then the first blow falls. A new flake jumps, narrow and sharp along a span, enough to strip the morning's roots. You smile inwardly, not in triumph, because there is one more useful edge to spare the band a notch of pain. Today's victories are only this, small, yet enough to raise a whole day. When the sun noses past the canopy, the band is in rhythm. One goes to roots, one to seed, one to bone, one mends flakes. Children carry leaves, elders watch hands. No drum opens the scene. No order is shouted, as only beats that have entered the blood. Those beats give a thin but true endurance. You understand why the band has weathered wind and rain and lean days. No strange force fell from the sky. No grand cunning. Sharp stone spared the body. A spared body has calm to see one another, correct one another, yield to one another. From that, the whole is raised. You breathe in. You breathe out slow. You hear core strike anvil, seeds crack, bone splits. These are the day's music. No player needed, only enough hands and patience. The song takes you through noon, leads you toward dusk, and lays you down like a lullaby. Before this tale closes, look once more. Stones in the middle, a ring of people around them. No fire, no roof, no oath. Yet something has changed. The body has learned to spend less for each bite. When one body is eased, a small band can stand firmer in the wind. From that firmer ground, the next road appears. It does not lead to hidden arts. It turns toward ordinary work. Divide tasks more cleanly, carry heavy cores in ways that spare backs. Pass motions from hand to hand in clearer order. Those will be the next yard of the tale. How a small band, with heavy rough stone, can live longer and steadier in a world that is never kind. The ring of people drew in around the stones already spent. The ground kept the dents of old blows, shard edges flashing under thin light. There was no fire at the circle's heart. The heavy cores sat like the day's heartstones, and the fragments lay scattered where hands had cast them. Morning began with stone meeting a flat anvil. The broad-shouldered one raised a core and set it into yesterday's worn groove. Another chose a fine-edged flake to shave the bark from roots. Children sat lower, their eyes tracking the elders' fingers, learning by watching. No one preached a long lesson. Teaching passed by, laying a steady hand on a wrist, turning a small angle. setting a measured force, then stepping back so the other could do it alone. You stood at the circle's rim, dust lifted with the smell of new sun. In your mind, the band's work divided itself cleanly, though no one spoke it aloud. The strong bore the cause, the deft kept the keen flakes, the sharp-eyed searched out flat anvils. The elders sat behind all, reading every fracture line. Each person was a beat in a song with no voice. Because flakes bit into root and bone opened its marrow, the meal grew less cruel, and there was breath left for that song to rise. The short council moved by glances. The old root bed had thinned, so the band would go toward the gravel flats where deep roots and old bones slept under sand. The core bearer led, picking a path with gentler slope so no one slipped. 2 keepers of the flakes walked in the middle so edges would not strike rock. The rest gathered palm-sized anvils. No shout was needed. All relied on the known cadence of feet and the faint clicking of flakes in hide pouches that said they were safe. The path opened through high grass. Wind ran dry. The smell of damp earth crept into the nose and reminded all of the stone hollow they sought. Steps stayed even. There was no hunger storm at their backs. A child hugged a bundle of unshaved roots, ran a few paces, then checked the hand to be sure the flake had not slipped. At times, an elder set a hand to a young shoulder, pointing to ground that would hold. Such care was born of a small change with heavy weight. Stone had opened the meal, and the meal had opened the heart. At the gravel's edge the band spread while keeping an unspoken outer ring. One knelt and pressed an ear to the ground, listening for the dim hollowness of a buried bone tube. Another took up a heavy flake and tapped along the surface to test. No foul scent. No flies. Old bite marks only. Enough to decide. A core went upon a flat slab. The first blow fell like a drum that calls the day awake. A large rough flake sprang free, its edge uneven, one corner keen. You passed it to the root shaver. That wrist tilted a hair. Fibres lifted from bark like snarls combed from hair. A child stared and reached to try. The elder nodded, set a guiding hand upon the small wrist to teach the weight. When the flake's nose wandered offline, another hand touched the elbow and set the angle true. No scolding, no snatching. Knowledge moved into flesh the way water moves through root. At the water's lip 2 others ground seed. The anvil lay slanted, the heavy flake pressed downward, seeds breaking into finer meal. The meal went into a leaf bowl and sat by the elders. They tasted a speck first, and if the flavour ran wrong they cast it off. If it ran true they gave a nod. All trusted that practised tongue. A wrong handful could throw the night into writhing. Stone allowed a little more daring, yet the tongue kept the gate. The sun climbed. Veins grew harder to read. The core bearer lowered his hands and gave the place to another, not from weariness, but because a new hand brought a new eye. Taking turns was not only for rest, it was to add ways of reading stone. Each had a manner of hearing the shock, a way of seeing the vein, a habit of laying in force, all braided together to raise the odds that a flake would fall as hoped. You took a fresh flake. The left edge ran sharper, the right ran thicker. This one was born for stripping fibres, not for splitting bone. You turned it in your palm and slipped it into a separate pouch, saving it for your own task. No one issued orders. Each sensed a flake's nature and put it by, then traded at the right time. The stones in the clearing were a common store without a name. Any who came knew where each thing belonged, knew how to take and how to return. Midday came as small even shares, meal and shaved root mixed, touched with thin marrow skimmed from the opened bone. Children ate first, elders after. Core bearers, who must keep their back steady, took 1 spoon more. There was no quarrel. The common gain was plain as sun. Keep strength and the afternoon would give more flakes, and the band would go less hungry on the morrow. After eating a quiet rose of its own, no one slept. Eyes stayed open, the heart lay loose. In that quiet an elder lifted a core slashed by a wandering vein. He set it in your hands and with a light tap showed how the crack would run if the force fell too straight. You tried it different, tipping the hammer a breath. A sliver came away, fit for cutting the thin rim of hide. He nodded. There was no praise, only a nod. It was enough to set memory in your bones. On the gravel knowledge swam like a small fish along a bank. From the hand of the elder to a hand still learning, from an old wrist to the rising shoulder of a youth. There were no names for each trick, No lesson with start or end. It ran within the labour and the meal and the way one set a flake on another's palm without drawing blood. Shadows leaned long and the band chose to return to last night's ground. New flakes were swaddled in leaves and bound tight for the slope. Cores worth breaking were divided so no one carried too much. The weaker did not bear cores. They took the flat anvils, carried leaves for meal. Each had a part, small or large, tied to the common cadence. So a small band held firm while crossing unknown ground. On the path back there lay a run of sucking sand. The lead tried a foot, stepped back, and signalled with a hand so the band curved toward a ridge of dry grass. No one grew impatient. The day had given her enough. There was no need to race the dusk. Calm like this was not born in the blood. It was forged in mornings when flakes fell at the right moment, in noontides without aching jaws, in afternoons when work sat in clean order. At the night ground all found their places. Flakes went to the dry corner. Cores were set in rows so morning eyes would know which would split fair, which had gone dull. The flat anvil stood by a wind-shielded lip. There was no fire to gather. The heap of stone was the centre. They sat in a ring, near yet far enough that edges would not cut a neighbour's shin. Soft voices murmured. A short laugh broke when a child dozed and woke with a nose in meal. You sat facing the stones. Your palms slid along a flake's edge, setting the keen spots for morning use. Since flakes had entered the meal, the hour after eating had changed. It had been a slump of spent strength. Now it was a quiet with use. One mended a leaf pouch. One counted small flakes. One picked grit from the anvil. Small acts gathered into the sense of a place, though the roof was only crossed branches. Dusk thickened. At the rim the watcher stood still and listened to grass. He carried no spear. He held a heavy flake and knew the safe distance between flesh and shadow. Should a shape come, the ring would draw tight. Voices would rise low and steady to drive it off. There was no fire to lend its back. There was the nearness of each other. Stone had borne its part in the meal, and the meal made that nearness hold. You drew a slow breath. The earth's scent settled. Root gave a pale sweetness. Meal clung light to your fingers. A simple truth rose in you. A small band, by way of heavy rough stones, had learned to pass a long day without running. It did not need a voice. It lay in the chest with the even breath of the whole ring. Night began in such quiet. Dark crept into the gravel like a slow retreat of water. The ring closed another beat. At the centre the pile of cores and chosen flakes lay still, the day's heart. No fire. The last light was a thin line on stone edges and a young star just lifting to the sky. A low shiver ran through the ground. Not a herd, only the wind turning. The rim watcher raised a hand, palm flat, pressing the sound down. All understood. Motion slowed. Children drew leaf pouches close. Elders eased their backs against the propped anvil. You sat near the flakes and set 2 fingers on the sharp edge you had saved at noon. That touch steadied the heart. Though eyes could not see, all knew where the centre lay. Night opened with small tasks. One checked a pouch knot and laid it by a marker stone so dawn would not lose it. Another teased grit from a flake's face so it would not cut a careless palm. The core bearer turned each core once and listened to sand rattle from a seam, reading by it the veins that might split tomorrow. No long words. Every quiet sound held meaning. One deep breath signalled a pause. 2 soft clicks of the tongue warned that a flake had slipped from the ring and must be found. You gave your flake to the child who had woken. The child laid it on a palm and kept still. An elder set a wrinkled finger to that wrist and marked the safe place to feel an edge. There was no grinding, no striking, only the right way to hold. When the flake returned, you set it in the leaf pouch and listened to flakes chime together in the dark. That thin chime counted. Each time you heard it, you knew how many keen edges remained. At the rim, the watch changed places without tapping stone. They stood in a shallow arc, backs to the ring, eyes to the grass. Each kept a heavy flake so that if a dark shape pressed too near, the slap of stone on anvil would break the air like dry thunder. The night lay quiet. Wind carried the creek's clean scent. That meant safety. Other scents meant trouble. Rank hair and sour musk. Earth freshly clawed. None of that walked this air. There was light enough for one last act. The elder chose a core with a long pale vein. He set it upon the anvil and did not strike. He set your hand to the thin white trace on the rock. He taught you to feel the line with skin. not with sight. You tipped your wrist and changed the angle a little, then stepped back. That was the night's lesson, short and unstraining, so that when the sun bent upward your hand would remember. They gave a few beats to tomorrow's road, not with words, with flakes and cores stacked in the order to come. Softer cores at the edge, harder ones within, stripping flakes on top, heavy pounders below. They set a marker stone a little tilted toward the creek. If fog came, that sign would guide the morning. When all sat right, hands drifted near one another. They did not touch. They felt for the fact of others in the space between. You thought of bands that had crossed this ground before. Some hauled too many heavy cores, pressing them on weaker arms. Not far along, they threw weight aside in confusion and set no clear sign. The road back bent astray. Some hid flakes too well, each hoarding alone, no one knowing what the others held. When need came, 2 hands offered stripping flakes and none had a pounder. An afternoon broke apart because no one could speak by the order of things. The lesson lay now upon the stones, in the way they were set, in a marker laid a little toward water. Others kept no quiet at night. Children wailed too long, or grown ones told tales too loud. The scents and sounds drew other ears. A shadow came close and breathed. The ring closed late. Flakes rose slow. Morning showed claw marks. Since then your band had chosen to listen at dusk. If any telling was needed, it was done by even breath, by a finger tracing a vein, by a light touch at an elbow to speak a word without sound. When the dark grew deep, the first change of watch began. Sentries stepped into the ring. 2 others took the rim. People lay on their sides, heads on leaf pouches. There was no fire for warmth. Heat seeped from day-warmed ground. Each kept a small flake in hand, not to strike but to give the mind a post to hold. The edge recalled tomorrow's work. Something waited for you, clear and real, cupped in your palm. You shut your eyes. No red flare behind the lids, only bands of soft dark. You heard more because of the quiet. Drops slid from leaves. A heavy stone gave a tiny knock when someone turned. A child breathed steady. You set your breath among those sounds, and it vanished into them. The ring grew rounder as the breaths fell into one measure. Night was not perfectly smooth. Far off a faint rattling rose. The watcher shifted stance and tossed a pebble into dry brush. The light crackle sent a simple message. People are here. The night flowed on. No chase, no show. Only a reminder to hold the distance. Toward midnight the elder sat up. He did not sleep long or deep. He set a small flake into your hand. In the dark he rolled it from wrist to fingertip so you felt the weight at either end, and would know the keen side without sight at dawn. He took it back and slid it into his leaf pouch. He did not keep it to claim it. He kept it because his hand knew that balance. At sunrise he would pass it to the right work. You thought on how knowledge moved through the dark, not as words striking the face, as a flake set into another's hand in silence, as a marker stone set upon earth, as cores stacked in an agreed order. Such signs were light as breath and outlasted a shout. When the sun rose, although eyes still stung, the hands remembered the way. A wind turn brought water's scent stronger. A night bird called once and quieted. The watcher lowered his hand, palm inward. That meant safety. No pressure was on the ring. Your shoulders loosened. Your back softened. Salt from the evening's meal touched your tongue. It pulled up a split bone and a shaved root. You were not hungry. You remembered the fairness of portions falling true, few words and much understanding. That understanding lived in the way the band formed a circle without command. Now sleep could be true. Your head lay on the leaf pouch. Your hand set the flake by your hip, the width of a finger away. The one beside you turned, back to your knee. Not an embrace. Only proof of another body, but from the rim came a soft splash. Someone drank. Then hush. Overhead the sky seemed less black as your eyes adjusted. More stars showed. There was no tale to name them. They were there as the flakes were here, each keeping its place so others could hear themselves clearly. You slept a thin sleep. Any strange sound could have raised you. None did. All held rhythm. Because it held, the band did not labour to feel safe. Stone had done the work of stone. People had done the work of people. Night would pass like a quiet reach of river. At first light, before the sun rose, the band woke in a soft order. No one sprang up first. No one clung to sleep. The watch stepped into the ring and set their flakes down. The elder sat already, hand upon a core, waiting for a pale strip of light to touch the anvil. You waited with him. In that waiting, the truth the knight had spoken grew clear. A small band that could set stones and set people in an unwritten order would stand firmer on the road ahead. The first light struck the heap of flakes. The ring breathed out as one. You stood, your shoulders straightened of their own will. Your hand found your flake without looking. All was ready without a call. A new day opened with the first blow on the flat anvil. From that deep sound the band's order rose again, shard by shard, beat by beat, as it had yesterday and as it would tomorrow. Dawn slid up from the grass bank. Dew beaded on stone and shone as the sky broke pale. The circle loosened. No command was needed. Every motion followed a rule learned by hand and eye over many days. You unbound your leaf pouch. Inside lay keen flakes on a bed of dry grass. Their touch against one another was very soft. The elder sat by the flat anvil and laid a palm on its cool face to feel if night damp had crept into any seam. Then he pushed toward you a core chosen the day before. It was large and heavy. Pale veins ran across it like frozen bolts. The strongest rose first. They lashed the heavy core to a sheet of bark and lifted it to a shoulder. The leaner carried stripping flakes, pounders, and a few portable anvils. Children bore light pouches of seed and gathered root. No one clutched everything. Each held what they knew how to use. The band followed the marker stone they had set last night, tilted toward the creek. The creek greeted them with the smell of clean water. On the sand lay old claw marks of a beast that had passed days ago. No fresh sign. A watcher stooped and lifted a piece of wood riddled with holes. It told that insects had eaten there, that soft roots ran near. The band spread in a fan and kept one another in sight. You knelt and set a stripping flake to a root-breaking ground. The edge bit through hard bark. One cut, then two. White flesh showed. You sliced short lengths and set them on a leaf. The one beside you laid a hand to your shoulder for a breath to say enough here. Move on. By mid-morning a dry hide smell rose in a thicket. A bone tube lay in the grass. No flesh, yet weight remained. The elder pointed with his chin toward a low flat stone for a makeshift anvil. There was no stir. They divided the work as before. One held the bone. One raised the pounder. You stood behind with a catching flake to cradle the marrow when the crack opened, keeping it from sand. 3 blows, a vein spread. The tube's mouth opened. Fat scent rose. No one rushed. Marrow was drawn with a stripping flake and laid on clean leaves. The elder touched a fingertip and tasted a dot as a silent rite to be sure no wrong smell lay there. Then he nodded. Sharing ran simple. Children were given short portions first. Watchers each took enough. Those who bore the heaviest cores took more to keep strength. You bit a little and passed your piece left. That turning of hands meant each received from another's palm. No one held a share too long. When the last bite was gone, there passed through the band a light and easy emptiness. None were stuffed and none went starry-eyed. Noon meant high light and whispering grass. The band sat in a small ring. On the ground lay the tools that had walked the day. A spare core waiting for blows. A stripping flake with a dulled edge. A portable flat anvil. The elder laid the core on stone. He did not strike at once. He turned the core so the corners of eyes could follow the pale vein. He touched a flake's nose to the line. He said little. The lesson lay in loose shoulders, a wrist lowered by half a finger, breath going even. A deep note sounded when stone met stone. The wedge opened slow. A new flake broke free and fell into your palm. Thicker than the old. Not perfectly straight. Sharp enough to shave roots and cut dry hide. In the short rest, someone set round pebbles into a small mark. It was no boast. It told any band passing that good stone lay here. It would tell your own if you returned in weeks. The earth was not the same as before. A pattern rose on its face, set by human hands without much noise. Early afternoon they moved again. The ground turned to clay and gravel. Each step clung. The lead stopped. Little claw marks scored the earth like those from a night prowl. Not new, yet enough to warn. The band shifted shape. Heavy flake-bearers took the outer ring. Children and elders moved within. Each walked a forearm's length from the one ahead, so if they turned back they would not tangle. You dropped half a step to keep the spacing true. After a while, the stone underfoot changed its voice, soft to rough and dry. To the left lay a field of fist-sized rock, fit for anvils. They halted. Each took 2 or 3 flat pieces and laid them into the common bark tray. With more anvils, blows would cost less strength. The picking rang with a distant, steady rhythm. None snatched the best shapes. Those carrying the heaviest loads chose first. Others took smaller pieces without complaint. In that quiet, you saw why a small band could go farther than before. Not from sudden might, but because each knew their work and knew when to yield. Late day, they chose a place to stop. Wind ran down slope without getting caught in stone pockets. The floor gave them 3 flats for anvils. Grass rose high enough to hide, low enough not to choke. No fresh beast sign. They set a small ring of marker stones. Not fully closed, so there was a way in. Still no fire. The order of night would rest on falling sky and keen ears, as the night before. Now the band had new anvils and new flakes and 2 or 3 small signs on the earth so morning would not lose its line. Before dark, the elder gathered useless shards into a low heap by the anvil. In that pile you saw the shape of another order, ground arranged by hands without much sound. When the band moved on, the heap would remain and speak of a lesson, a meal, a safe day's march. You sat and braced your elbows on your knees. A child gave you a leaf with a smear of dried marrow. It was no longer food. The fat scent clung to your fingers. You touched a fingertip to your tongue. A thin taste of richness. It pulled up the image of a split core and a deep blow. For a heartbeat, the entire day passed like a rope knotted true, knotted by hand and eye and breath. No rope could be seen. The ring held. Night came soft as a brown cloth over the ground. The band repeated its customs, tools within reach. Watch changed. Any story, if spoken, was 3 or 4 words and gone. You lay on your side with your back to a shoulder. There was no smoke to cling to, only dry grass and cold stone. Above, thin stars. You heard someone tap a flake with a nail. 1 beat, then 2, the sign that the place sat right. All sank towards stillness. In that narrow span between waking and sleep, a thought drifted thin as mist. Before these flakes, the band had moved only by nature's marks, eating what would allow eating and lodging where the land allowed. Today, along the long road, they had left small signs of their own. A heap of shards set in shape, an anvil turned to the wind, a marker stone tipped toward water, not grand, enough to make the earth different so those after could step. You drew your leaf pouch to your chin. Inside, your flake lay still. It would never be as fair as the one some will make in years ahead. Its edge was not even as a leaf. It was the first speech of hand to stone. At dawn, when light touched the flat, you would lift it and go. The land ahead had no name. On it, more small human marks would be laid. The wind turned once and stood still. Your heart found an even pace. The ring breathed like one body. There was no fire to read faces. There was the memory of where all lay, and the knowing that when the sun rose, the old order of hand and stone would open the road again. From a simple heap of shards that road had begun. From it other human changes would come, one upon another. Dark crept into the gravel like a slow retreat of water. The ring closed another beat. At the centre, the pile of cores and chosen flakes lay still, the day's heart. No fire. The last light was a thin line on stone edges and a young star just lifting to the sky. A low shiver ran through the ground. Not a herd, only the wind turning. The rim watcher raised a hand, palm flat, pressing the sound down. All understood. Motion slowed. Children drew leaf pouches close. Elders eased their backs against the propped anvil. You sat near the flakes and set 2 fingers on the sharp edge you had saved at noon. That touch steadied the heart. Though eyes could not see, all knew where the centre lay. Night opened with small tasks. One checked a pouch knot and laid it by a marker stone so dawn would not lose it. Another teased grit from a flake's face so it would not cut a careless palm. The core bearer turned each core once and listened to sand rattle from a seam, reading by it the veins that might split tomorrow. No long words. Every quiet sound held meaning. One deep breath signalled a pause. 2 soft clicks of the tongue warned that a flake had slipped from the ring and must be found. You gave your flake to the child who had woken. The child laid it on a palm and kept still. An elder set a wrinkled finger to that wrist and marked the safe place to feel an edge. There was no grinding, no striking, only the right way to hold. When the flake returned, You set it in the leaf pouch and listened to flakes chime together in the dark. That thin chime counted. Each time you heard it, you knew how many keen edges remained. At the rim, the watch changed places without tapping stone. They stood in a shallow arc, backs to the ring, eyes to the grass. Each kept a heavy flake so that if a dark shape pressed too near, the slap of stone on anvil would break the air like dry thunder. The night lay quiet. Wind carried the creek's clean scent. That meant safety. Other scents meant trouble. Rank hair and sour musk, earth freshly clawed. None of that walked this air. There was light enough for one last act. The elder chose a core with a long pale vein. He set it upon the anvil and did not strike. He set your hand to the thin white trace on the rock. He taught you to feel the line with skin, not with sight. You tipped your wrist and changed the angle a little, then stepped back. That was the night's lesson, short and unstraining, so that when the sun bent upward your hand would remember. They gave a few beats to tomorrow's road, not with words, with flakes and cores stacked in the order to come, softer cores at the edge, harder ones within, stripping flakes on top, heavy pounders below. They set a marker stone a little tilted toward the creek. If fog came, that sign would guide the morning, when all sat right, hands drifted near one another. They did not touch. They felt for the fact of others and the space between. You thought of bands that had crossed this ground before. Some hauled too many heavy cores, pressing them on weaker arms. Not far along, they threw weight aside in confusion and set no clear sign. The road back bent astray. Some hid flakes too well, each hoarding alone, no one knowing what the others held. When need came, 2 hands offered stripping flakes and none had a pounder. An afternoon broke apart because no one could speak by the order of things. The lesson lay now upon the stones, in the way they were set, in a marker laid a little toward water. Others kept no quiet at night. Children wailed too long, or grown ones told tales too loud. The scents and sounds drew other ears. A shadow came close and breathed. The ring closed late. Flakes rose slow. Morning showed claw marks. Since then your band had chosen to listen at dusk. If any telling was needed, it was done by even breath, by a finger tracing a vein, by a light touch at an elbow to speak a word without sound. When the dark grew deep, the first change of watch began. Sentries stepped into the ring. 2 others took the rim. People lay on their sides, heads on leaf pouches. There was no fire for warmth. Heat seeped from day-warmed ground. Each kept a small flake in hand, not to strike, but to give the mind a post to hold. The edge recalled tomorrow's work. Something waited for you, clear and real, cupped in your palm. You shut your eyes. No red flare behind the lids, only bands of soft dark. You heard her more because of the quiet. Drops slid from leaves. A heavy stone gave a tiny knock when someone turned. A child breathed steady. You set your breath among those sounds and it vanished into them. The ring grew rounder as the breaths fell into one measure. Night was not perfectly smooth. Far off a faint rattling rose. The watcher shifted stance and tossed a pebble into dry brush. The light crackle sent a simple message. People are here. The night flowed on. No chase. No show. Only a reminder to hold the distance. Toward midnight the elder sat up. He did not sleep long or deep. He set a small flake into your hand. In the dark he rolled it from wrist to fingertips. You felt the weight at either end, and would know the keen side without sight at dawn. He took it back and slid it into his leaf pouch. He did not keep it to claim it. He kept it because his hand knew that balance. At sunrise he would pass it to the right work. You thought on how knowledge moved through the dark, not as words striking the face, as a flake set into another's hand in silence, as a marker stone set upon earth, as cores stacked in an agreed order. Such signs were light as breath and outlasted a shout. When the sun rose, though eyes still stung, the hands remembered the way. A wind turn brought water's scent stronger. A night bird called once and quieted. The watcher lowered his hand, palm inward. That meant safety. No pressure was on the ring. Your shoulders loosened as your back softened. Salt from the evening's meal touched your tongue. It pulled up a split bone and a shaved root. You were not hungry. You remembered the fairness of portions falling true. Few words and much understanding. That understanding lived in the way the band formed a circle without command. Now sleep could be true. Your head lay on the leaf pouch. Your hand set the flake by your hip, the width of a finger away. The one beside you turned, back to your knee. Not an embrace. Only proof of another body. From the rim came a soft splash. Someone drank. Then hush. Overhead, the sky seemed less black as your eyes adjusted. More stars showed. There was no tail to name them. They were there as the flakes were here, each keeping its place so others could hear themselves clearly. You slept a thin sleep. Any strange sound could have raised you. None did. All held rhythm. Because it held. The band did not labour to feel safe. Stone had done the work of stone. People had done the work of people. Night would pass like a quiet reach of river. At first light, before the sun rose, the band woke in a soft order. No one sprang up first. No one clung to sleep. The watch stepped into the ring and set their flakes down. The elder sat already, hand upon a core, waiting for a pale strip of light to touch the anvil. You waited with him. In that waiting, and the truth the night had spoken grew clear, a small band that could set stones and set people in an unwritten order would stand firmer on the road ahead. The first light struck the heap of flakes. The ring breathed out as one. You stood, your shoulders straightened of their own will. Your hand found your flake without looking. All was ready without a call. A new day opened with the first blow on the flat anvil. From that deep sound the band's order rose again, shard by shard, beat by beat, as it had yesterday and as it would tomorrow. Dawn slid up from the grass bank. Dew beaded on stone and shone as the sky broke pale. The circle loosened. No command was needed. Every motion followed a rule learned by hand and eye over many days. You unbound your leaf pouch. Inside lay keen flakes on a bed of dry grass. Their touch against one another was very soft. The elder sat by the flat anvil and laid a palm on its cool face to feel if night damp had crept into any seam. Then he pushed toward you a core chosen the day before. It was large and heavy. Pale veins ran across it like frozen bolts. The strongest rose first. They lashed the heavy core to a sheet of bark and lifted it to a shoulder. The leaner carried stripping flakes, pounders, and a few portable anvils. Children bore light pouches of seed and gathered root. No one clutched everything. Each held what they knew how to use. The band followed the marker stone they'd set last night, tilted toward the creek. The creek greeted them with the smell of clean water. On the sand lay old claw marks of a beast that had passed days ago. No fresh sign. A watcher stooped and lifted a piece of wood riddled with holes. It told that insects had eaten there, that soft roots ran near. The band spread in a fan and kept one another in sight. You knelt and set a stripping flake to a root-breaking ground. The edge bit through hard bark. One cut, then two. White flesh showed. You sliced short lengths and set them on a leaf. The one beside you laid a hand to your shoulder for a breath to say enough here. Move on. By mid-morning a dry hide smell rose in a thicket. A bone tube lay in the grass. No flesh, yet weight remained. The elder pointed with his chin toward a low flat stone for a makeshift anvil. There was no stir. They divided the work as before. One held the bone, one raised the pounder. You stood behind with a catching flake to cradle the marrow when the crack opened, keeping it from sand. 3 blows, a vein spread. The tube's mouth opened. Fat scent rose. No one rushed. Marrow was drawn with a stripping flake and laid on clean leaves. The elder touched a fingertip and tasted a dot as a silent rite to be sure no wrong smell lay there. Then he nodded. Sharing ran simple. Children were given the short portions first. Watchers each took enough. Those who bore the heaviest cores took more to keep strength. You bit a little and passed your piece left. That turning of hands meant each received from another's palm. No one held a share too long. When the last bite was gone, there passed through the band a light and easy emptiness. None was stuffed, and none went starry-eyed. Noon meant high light and whispering grass. The band sat in a small ring. On the ground lay the tools that had walked the day. A spare core waiting for blows. A stripping flake with a dulled edge. A portable flat anvil. The elder laid the core on stone. He did not strike at once. He turned the core so the corners of eyes could follow the pale vein. He touched a flake's nose to the line. He said little. The lesson lay in loose shoulders, a wrist lowered by half a finger, breath going even. A deep note sounded when stone met stone. The wedge opened slow. A new flake broke free and fell into your palm, thicker than the old, not perfectly straight, sharp enough to shave root and cut dry hide. In the short rest, someone set round pebbles into a small mark. It was no boast. It told any band passing that good stone lay here. It would tell your own if you returned in weeks. The earth was not the same as before. A pattern rose on its face, set by human hands without much noise. Early afternoon they moved again. The ground turned to clay and gravel. Each step clung. The lead stopped. Little claw marks scored the earth like those from a night prowl. Not new, yet enough to warn. The band shifted shape. Heavy flake-bearers took the outer ring. Children and elders moved within. Each walked a forearm's length from the one ahead, so if they turned back they would not tangle. You dropped half a step to keep the spacing true. After a while the stone underfoot changed its voice. Soft to rough and dry. To the left lay a field of fist-sized rock, fit for anvils. They halted. Each took 2 or 3 flat pieces and laid them into the common bark tray. With more anvils, blows would cost less strength. The picking rang with a distant, steady rhythm. None snatched the best shapes. Those carrying the heaviest loads chose first. Others took smaller pieces without complaint. In that quiet you saw why a small band could go farther than before, not from sudden might, but because each knew their work and knew when to yield. Late day, they chose a place to stop. Wind ran downslope without getting caught in stone pockets. The floor gave them 3 flats for anvils. Grass rose high enough to hide, low enough not to choke. No fresh beast sign. They set a small ring of marker stones, not fully closed, so there was a way in. Still no fire. The order of night would rest on falling sky and keen ears, as the night before. Now the band had new anvils and new flakes and 2 or 3 small signs on the earth, so morning would not lose its line. Before dark, the elder gathered useless shards into a low heap by the anvil. In that pile you saw the shape of another order, ground arranged by hands without much sound. When the band moved on, the heap would remain and speak of a lesson, a meal, a safe day's march. You sat and braced your elbows on your knees. A child gave you a leaf with a smear of dried marrow. It was no longer food. The fat scent clung to your fingers. You touched a fingertip to your tongue. A thin taste of richness. It pulled up the image of a split core and a deep blow. For a heartbeat, the entire day passed like a rope knotted true, knotted by hand and eye and breath. No rope could be seen. The ring held. Night came soft as a brown cloth over the ground. The band repeated its customs. Tools within reach. Watch changed. Any story, if spoken, was 3 or 4 words and gone. You lay on your side with your back to a shoulder. There was no smoke to cling to, only dry grass and cold stone. Above, thin stars. You heard someone tap a flake with a nail. 1 beat, then 2. The sign that the place sat right. All sank toward stillness. In that narrow span between waking and sleep, a thought drifted thin as mist. Before these flakes, the band had moved only by nature's marks, eating what would allow eating and lodging where the land allowed. Today, along the long road, they had left small signs of their own. A heap of shards set in shape, an anvil turned to the wind, a marker stone tipped toward water. Not grand, enough to make the earth different so those after could step. You drew your leaf pouch to your chin. Inside, your flake lay still. It would never be as fair as the one some will make in years ahead. Its edge was not even as a leaf. It was the first speech of hand to stone. At dawn, when light touched the flat, you would lift it and go. The land ahead had no name. On it more small human marks would be laid. The wind turned once and stood still. Your heart found an even pace. The ring breathed like one body. There was no fire to read faces. There was the memory of where all lay, and knowing that when the sun rose, the old order of hand and stone would open the road again. From a simple heap of shards that road had begun. From it other human changes would come, one upon another, on the old earth. The stamped blows still remain. The sharp shard lies still, yet the tale began there. When you close your eyes, picture a gentle wind over a Kenyan sand flat. On that ground, a few heavy stones are set in the right places. One coarse hand touches the core, another hand steadies the anvil. A low thud rolls out. A sharp flake breaks free, its edge uneven yet keen enough. That moment opens the many things we have just walked through. We have turned over what once felt true. Not only the genus Homo knew how to make tools. 500,000 years before Oldowan, very early workers produced the Lomekwi implements. Big cores, rough anvils. The method is striking on an anvil or setting a core on a firm face and striking. The result is a sharp edge with bulky debris, with wedge scars on sight, with impact faces, with piles of shatter that speak in place of words. From that sharp shard the meal widened. The ancients cracked bone to draw out fatty marrow, pounded hard roots to soften them, cut branches, trimmed hide from a carcass when chance allowed. There was no boasting there, only steady hands, a breath of rich scent, and a quiet division of portions within the ring of people. From that same shard, the mind had to learn to read stone. It had to know where the vein runs, how the strike lands, what angle to drive so the flake leaves as intended. That conduct is unlike picking up any random stone. It demands foresight. It demands a choice of material. It demands decisions in sequence. It is not yet a standardized tool culture. Each scatter has its own way, yet the first voice of the hand to matter had already sounded. The effect upon the body comes by a long road. Food worked before it reaches the mouth lets the jaw ease. Digestion toils less. Energy is freed for other work. We keep our words plain. We do not claim absolute causes across hundreds of thousands of years. We only note the opening path that the data allow us to see. A small band grew steadier because of it. The strong carry cause. The deft keep the flakes. Young and old take shares by the wisdom of the troop. Knowledge passes hand to hand by eye and shoulder, by standing close and waiting for the fall of the angle. There is no ruling fire inside this frame. There is only stone and the small order people reset upon the ground, yet even so little is a step of taking charge. The earth begins to change to the will of the hand. If you listen, you will hear the cord that ties 5 tails together, from a find dated to 3.3 million years to a widened table, from repeated motions to learning to read stone with the mind, from a body eased of burden to a band less unsteady. Each small step, each muted blow, pushes the road forward another span. Now is the hour to close the circle. No drum is needed, only slow breathing. Let that stone field drift away. Let the rubble show itself as a gentle point of light. Let the scent of marrow fade in memory, and let the image of a hand turning a core, waiting for the right seat, rest warm in a corner of the mind. Tomorrow, history will go on with other materials, with fire, with wood, with bone, with words, but far ahead of that stands a quiet marker, Lomekwi, where a first sharp flake broke free to eat, to make, to think, to live together. Night wind goes light across the imagined sand. Your heartbeat evens, all settles. When you sleep, the old strike marks still remain on the earth. When you wake, the road of people will continue from those small signs.